Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My Karen wife demands I cook special eggs for her after I've already finished cooking. Last weekend, I, 36 male, decided that I was going to make my family, my wife who's 35, and my kids who are 12, 11, and 9, a big breakfast spread as part of the lame, according to our oldest daughter, family time that we decided to have that day. The plan was to have breakfast together, watch a movie, have lunch, and play some games as a family before we release the kids from the clutches of the, again, lame family time. So anyway, I got up early, heated up the waffle iron and the huge stovetop skillet, and went to work making waffles, scrambled eggs, bacon, sausage, and hash browns. As I was finishing and the kids had plated up, my wife asked me to throw a couple of eggs over easy on for her. She's the only one in our family who can stand runny yolks. Neither I nor the kids will touch them, but she really likes them. I just told her, nah, I'm finishing up already. If you really want a couple of eggs your way and want to make them yourself, go for it. But I'm done. She responded, you're already cooking. I'm in the mood for a couple of over-easy eggs. Why can't you just throw them on for me? I refused, and it turned into way more of a quiet, bickering argument than it should have. It's been on my mind since, and on the one hand, I feel bad my wife just asked me for a small favor that wouldn't have been a big deal at all to fulfill. But on the other hand, I had made plenty of food already. My wife likes scrambled eggs too, just fine, and there was plenty of food for her to eat. Why did she need to go insisting on her special request? It was honestly a silly, petty fight, but nonetheless, I'm curious who people think was in the right. Edit. The top question asked if my wife and I routinely bicker this way. No, we don't. That's why things bothered me so much. Neither of us usually dig our heels in so much over something so minor, which is why I felt weird enough about this to ask strangers about it. Now, having said that, while there is some dissension, the prevailing opinion is that I was wrong. I accept that. I let the lazy mood I was in that morning take over when I should have just made my wife happy. But some people are making way too much out of this. My wife and I love each other and we love our kids and everything's good. We have a good family. Stop wishing bad things upon our marriage and family just because I got a little lazy one morning. I just wanted to know if I was in the wrong in this one situation, and apparently I was. I can accept that. You're the jerk, but more in a sad way. It's a small thing that would have meant a lot. Not the end of the world, but just one of those missed opportunities to give a tiny bit extra when asked. If you're honest with yourself, would she have done it for you if you had asked? It was a bid for connection from her to him. He turned it down because he felt like he had already done the connection thing already. In the psych community, there's starting to be really good research done on why couples break up, with the biggest reason being small bids for connection are rejected, thwarted, or otherwise ignored. It would have taken OP all of 2 minutes to cook wife's eggs, but in the long run, it could make all the difference between a happy couple and a divorced couple. OP, you're the jerk. Hey honey, go get me a beer from the fridge and give me the remote. This is a bid for connection, so you have to do it. You're the jerk. Next time, make the eggs. Make the Chili by Pam Berg. A good friend of mine unexpectedly lost her husband. A couple of months later, we were going for a run together chatting about nothing. She asked me what my dinner plans were. I told her my hubby wanted chili, but I didn't feel like stopping at the store. We ran on for a few more minutes when she quietly said, make the chili. It took me a few minutes to realize we were no longer talking about dinner. It was about going out of your way to do something for someone you love, because at any moment, they could unexpectedly be taken away from you. The next time someone you love wants you to go for a walk, watch some football, or play a board game, just put your phone down and give them your undivided attention. Just do it. Make the chili. If this were family time for me and I was cooking breakfast, I would have known how my spouse likes their eggs and made them some over easy while making scrambled. Just like when I cooked for my mom, I would pull some bacon out early because she liked it floppy, or remove some of the scrambled eggs early for my sister because I like mine rubberized. Because that's what people who care about someone else's needs or desires or preferences do. That's my idea of family time. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. The irony of family time, but not doing simple nice gestures for your spouse. You're the jerk for literally avoiding 1 to 2 minutes of cooking more eggs for your wife. Your wife, not the jerk. I hate to be that guy, but if the roles were reversed, this comment section would look very different. You all would be telling OP, your husband has no right to demand you cook more eggs the way he likes them. If he wants extra food cooked a special way, tell him to do it himself, and get divorced while you're at it. You deserve so much better. I know I'll get downvoted to heck for pointing out the constant hypocrisy that we see here on Reddit, but at least I get to make my point. How did I know that guy was gonna get hundreds of downvotes? You're the jerk. God, I hope she leaves you. You remind me so much of my ex-husband, it's not even funny. I'd ask him to do the smallest things, and he'd act like it was the biggest chore in the world. His excuse was always that he had worked all day. He did construction, but honestly, he was pretty much a low-level grunt that just carried tools around for the men who were actually important. Sure, I was at home all day, but I was doing the real work raising our son. He'd get home, and I'd ask him to run to the grocery store for some milk, and he'd flip out on me, asking why I couldn't have mentioned it to him before he left work. Stupid little things like this are why I left him, and why I'm now living a comfortable life off the child support he pays me and the benefits I get from my crippling anxiety, which yes, I have been diagnosed with by a real doctor. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for not making the extra eggs for his wife or not? Please let us know. Would I make the eggs? The answer to that is, if I felt like it. Quit swimming so stupid. My grandson is copying you. It all starts with the most infernal of devices at the gym, the treadmill. See, a friend of mine who is basically a professional gym rat told me, "Dude bro guy, you gotta up your cardio game," and insists that a half an hour on a treadmill every time I hit the gym would be a good plan. Life pro tip: when someone addresses you as dude bro guy, seek a second opinion. I did the treadmill thing for a few weeks, and then I noticed anytime I went downhill, my knee was like, "Hey, you're a jerk, stop that," which was a problem, as I have a dog who likes to go on walks, and where I live, it's not precisely known for its flat terrain. This was an issue. Then it got worse. Now it was downhills and stairs. Deadlifts, squats, leg press, no problem. Slight downhill or stairs, oh no. Figuring knees aren't something one should ignore and hope it goes away with, I met with my doctor. She promptly referred me to physical therapy and not a knee brace like I was hoping. I met with the PT lady. She did an exam, said my quads are wonk and need work. I also discovered where my quads are. I was told to not do a lot with my legs at the gym other than bikes or swimming. All things being equal, I'll swim. I can swim, but I cannot swim well for very long. Turns out being out of breath and trying to get actual air in isn't as easy as it used to be, especially when some person is splashing water all around. Until my lungs catch up with the rest of me, I've adopted what I call the fatty twirl. 4 or 5 strokes of freestyle, roll onto my back, and then kick with my legs until I've got air in me. Then roll back for more and pray I haven't gotten close enough to the edge of the pool to smack my hand into it. I assume I'm doing well because physical therapy lady hasn't given me that "I'm disappointed in you" look, typically reserved for dentists when one has forgotten to floss. But that brings us to yesterday. Normally I go in the morning, mostly in the interests of avoiding the shrieking kids while I'm trying to do my thing. But work was nutty and I went later than I usually do. There were clumps of teens doing I don't even know what, but they mostly just snickered to each other and I minded my own business. Now, the dry part of my routine is done and it's pool time. I wound up taking a lap lane next to a grandmother in her 50s who was apparently trying to teach her grandkid, who was 10, tips on how to swim properly. I didn't hear a whole lot, seeing as when my ears weren't underwater, there was a fat guy splashing and making a bunch of noise. But I could tell the kid was splashing and coughing a lot, and this made Grandma upset. I didn't pay attention because it wasn't my business and there were lifeguards. I just wanted to get my laps done. Was on an extended period of back float time trying to catch my breath when I was ambushed by a pool noodle. Said noodle was applied directly to my face and not gently. While not painful, a noodle to the noggin is quite startling. I believe the first words out of my mouth were, "What the heck?" It was Grandma wielding the noodle, and she was giving me a very stern look. "Watch your language and stop doing that." I asked Grandma what it was I was doing that led her to believe smacking me with a noodle was a good idea. Grandma informed me that I was swimming stupid and her grandson wanted to copy me, so I needed to stop. After I confirmed that was in fact why I was assaulted with a noodle, I suggested she might have better luck in the kids' part of the pool. You know, the one over there, far away from me. She said she was just fine here. I was the one causing the problem. I thanked her for her opinion and promptly resumed my swim. On my return trip, this woman stepped into my lane and grabbed my ankle. I don't know about the rest of you, but when I'm swimming and someone grabs my leg, instant panic response. I immediately started flailing and kicking wildly, trying to free myself. Grandma got herself a nice adrenaline kick right in her forearm. I came up gasping for air and ready to start swinging. I'm stopped by the soothing sounds of Grandma wailing about how I just hurt her. Edit, her arm was okay. She wound up with a nasty bruise and that was it. I caught her with the top of my foot. Pro tip, top of the foot is a bad place to land a kick with. Naturally, that's enough to get the lifeguards involved, none of whom were apparently paying attention before she started screaming. 2 of them are lifting Grandma out of the pool and trying to examine her arm while she's still wailing and flailing. A third is giving me static about kicking another guest in the pool. Well, they started to, until I pointed out where the kicking happened and her grandson was. Poor kid had frozen in place with an expression of abject horror. Once she connects the dots, she realizes I'm not the problem. I tell her I'm going to get changed and then I'll identify myself to the front desk, because if I'm going to get interrogated, I'd prefer to be clothed. I did my thing, and by the time I'm showered and changed, there was a manager at the desk apologizing for what had gone on. They reviewed the tapes, and that woman's membership had been terminated, and they're very sorry, and please, please, please don't sue us. Best interrogation ever. Am I the jerk for giving them crabs? I, 28 female, teach at a lower income school here in the States. In the 6 years I've been teaching, I've always had animals in the classroom. I think it's really important, especially for students who can't have pets. This year for the animal biology lesson, in addition to having our pet turtle, I decided to invest in hermit crabs. Prior to the month-long unit, I had the kids do reports on animals and used hermit crabs as an example. Then, as the unit was introduced, I revealed the crabs. The kids were so excited. They took turns taking care of them, learned all about them, named them, etc. After the unit finished, I decided I'd pick 3 students to take the crabs home. They had to fill out a form, get permission from guardians, and the grown-ups had to come to me to get the crabs. All of this cleared with admin, of course. Everything was fine, and I chose my more responsible students, spoke with guardians, etc. A week later, one of the students told me something sad happened. Her crab died. I sent her to the guidance counselor to walk her through her grief and reached out to her mom to see how I could support her. Well, wouldn't you know it, according to Mom, I'm a total jerk for giving her daughter the pet to begin with. She's been crying nonstop and is devastated beyond belief. It wasn't my place to give her daughter a pet, and I crossed so many lines. She then complained to admin about me, and I had to have a meeting with the principal, who told me it was a bad idea. Crabs are fragile, and I knowingly inflicted grief on her and hurt an animal in doing so. I just wanted to make the unit fun and teach responsibility as well as social-emotional skills. Am I the jerk? Edit. The mom came in to pick the crab up, and I gave her an information packet along with all the supplies needed. I also let her know that crabs are fragile and warned her it may die, and I'd be in touch if she needed me. I also want to clarify that the parents were aware of this unit and crabs as potential pets before the permission slips went out. I discussed the unit during conferences because it is a big unit. I wanted to see if there was an interest prior to executing the plan, and if not, I was going to keep them and use them as classroom pets for years to come. Edit 2. A lot of you are upset I didn't provide all the students with crabs. As stated before, it's not realistic. I provided all the supplies for 3 crabs, and this was one of many giveaways I do in the classroom. It's on my own dime and my own time. I do lots of things to motivate my students, including pizza parties, teacher for a day, etc. I shower my students in love in ways that are tailored to my students' unique interests and needs. Out of the 22 students I have, only 8 applied for the crabs. Of those, only 4 parents agreed to it. I picked the 3 I felt most comfortable with. Can you imagine buying 22 crabs on a teacher salary? Y'all are wild. Edit 3. Thank you for all your love and support. I appreciate the stories and resources. I'm very humbled and I realize where I messed up in this situation. I now have a fountain of knowledge on crab care, and moving forward I will not give out pets. Instead, I'll maintain a critter corner and provide adequate supervised care. Thank you all again. Not the jerk. It was a sad experience, but that's part of life, and learning to deal with that grief is important for kids to learn. You went through all of the appropriate steps in getting parental permission and clearing it with the administration. You even set in motion a great plan for her to work through her grief. It's not a bad thing that she's crying. She's working through some hard emotions. But just because they're hard doesn't mean that they're bad. Crabs are fragile creatures, but so is any animal. So are humans. Life is fragile, and we'd do a severe disservice to kids if we sheltered them from life, which death is part of. Not the jerk. You had permission forms, and parents agreed and came in for the animal. You didn't give the crabs away. You made them available for adoption. That parent is missing a huge opportunity to emotionally invest in their kid. Sounds like those kids are lucky to have you. Everyone sucks here. I think the mom and the principal are the biggest jerks. If the parents signed a permission slip, that's on them, and your principal should be backing you up. Pets die, that's a fact of life. Now where you are the jerk. There are a lot of animals in the pet trade, especially those targeted to kids, which are not great pets. Hermit crabs are considered extremely advanced. In fact, some people don't think they can thrive in captivity at all. It doesn't matter how many information packets you gave these people. By choosing a hermit crab instead of a more beginner-friendly pet, you were setting them up to fail. Could they be successful? Sure, but that doesn't make it okay. As a teacher, you should be setting them up for success. It's also morally worse because failure is the death or suffering of a living creature. Well, what do you think? Is Opie the jerk for giving crabs out to the students or not? Please let us know. No good deed goes unpunished. I'm sure quite a few teachers out there have experienced this firsthand. Karen yells at the school nurse for calling her about her son's health. This is the only place I can think to post what I just witnessed. This only happened about 2 hours ago, and I can't stop thinking about it. Please don't mind the formatting. I'm on mobile. I'm a high school student, senior year, and I'm not the most careful person with what I eat, so I ended up getting food poisoning from eating leftover chicken that was set on the counter all night that I just threw in the microwave. I didn't feel anything until I was in the middle of first period class. I thought it was my regular stomach pain, so I tried to just muster through it until I felt nauseous and like I had to go to the bathroom, so I ended up going to the school clinic. When I entered, I noticed there were people in EMT uniforms surrounding a guy hunched over on a chair. I overheard them saying he was confused and not very responsive. I wasn't sure what was going on. I spoke to one of the nurses about my strong feeling of nausea, and they called my mom to come pick me up. So I was just waiting there in the clinic with a trash can in front of me. I heard one of the school nurses tell EMT people that the guy is diabetic and didn't have his insulin checker. Can't remember the exact term, just know it was something like that, with him, and how he couldn't answer simple questions like, "What is your name?" or "Where are you?" I knew a little bit about what they were checking because of a show that I watch, so I knew that this was a horrible sign. They had called his mom before I came in, so now they were just waiting. That's when I saw a very angry woman, entitled Mother, walking towards the clinic. When she entered, I could feel the air change. Her mere presence felt disturbing and slimy. She began to berate the school nurse for calling her because she works late and sleeps during the day. She said her son constantly forgets to bring his insulin checker and snacks and said that it wasn't her fault. That's a phrase she repeated a lot during her rant. "It's not my fault." She said he was 15 and had to take responsibility for his own medicine. Meanwhile, the guy was silently sitting there drinking a juice. She said she wouldn't be coming when they call anymore. That's when I got a text from my mom saying she was there, so I quietly got up, trying not to throw up or draw the attention of the entitled mother. My mom took me home, where I automatically ran to the bathroom. I have no experience with having diabetes, but the way that mother acted felt very wrong and uncomfortable. Am I the jerk for not buying real shoes? So my niece Carmen had her 11th birthday last week. A few months ago, she texted me that she would like a pair of Nikes that were around $150 for her birthday. I budgeted $150 for it. 3 weeks ago, she called me and asked, instead of the Nikes, can I split her gift so that she and her neighborhood friend, Conan, who's 12, can both have something. Carmen and Conan share a birthday and they're best friends. Apparently, Conan's mother told him ahead of time she probably would not be able to get him a birthday present this year due to having to prioritize car repairs. So Carmen wanted to share her gift so he wouldn't not have anything on his birthday. I asked her if she was sure, and she said yes. I asked what she would like, and she said she and Conan really want some Crocs. Apparently, Crocs and the Charms are all the rage in their school these days. Got sizes, favorite colors, and whatnot. So I got to work, and I was able to get 2 pairs of Crocs, 2 pairs of Croc flip-flops, and 2 packs of anime Croc Charms, all for under $120. Thanks to stacked coupons and sales. I even threw in some anime hoodies, only went over budget by $7. Not bad. I should note that my sister, Carmen's mother, is low income and they live in low income housing. My gift is usually the big ticket item and my sister always gets something much smaller. That being said, I also don't make a lot of money, so I don't want to just get some Crocs. I wanted to stretch that $150 as far as it would go. Their birthdays come and I gift them to them and they're ecstatic, super happy. Spent like 45 minutes talking about all the different charms and the characters from shows like Naruto, Demon Slayer, Juicy Kaisen, or something like that. I happily listened while they chatted and talked, and then we had takeout that I ordered and cupcakes prepared by Conan's mom and watched anime all day. It also turned out that Conan's mom did manage to get both kids something small after all, that Conan picked out for both of them. They both said it was the best birthday ever. Conan's mother took me aside privately and profusely thanks me and says she'll pay me back as soon as she can. I tell her no need because this was a gift from Carmen to Conan, not from me. I asked her to just be good to my niece when she comes around. She asked if she can thank me by cooking dinner, so I'll be coming over for dinner sometime. Later that day, my sister sees the gift and is irate. She apparently had planned for me to buy Carmen the Nikes as her school shoes and is upset with me because Crocs aren't real shoes. I asked if they're not allowed to wear Crocs to school, and she said they are. So I said she can just wear them to school. It doesn't seem to be a big deal to me. The kids are happy and had a great birthday. That's all that should be important. She absolutely disagrees and is still upset with me weeks later. Am I the jerk? Edit. I'm happy to see that almost everyone thinks I'm not the jerk. My sister is a good mom, but sometimes good people can also be jerks. I don't know what's going on with her, but I will chalk it up to stress and let it go. I'm probably gonna just buy Carmen a reasonable pair of shoes for Christmas, not as her main gift of course. We live in the US South, so we don't really have to worry about snow. Not the jerk. I think you did Carmen and Conan proud. I'm really impressed with Carmen, and she's the real hero here. Not all kids would sacrifice for others in this way. I guess she picked up these great values from OP and Conan's mom, or maybe it's just innate. Doesn't seem like the mom taught her this since she is fixated on expensive sneakers. Get a utility pair on sale for $30 and be proud of your kid. Don't ruin the joy of this generous act. Not the jerk. Your niece will probably need sneakers for gym class or colder months, but that's not your responsibility. If your sister was hoping you'd provide Nikes, she should have told you so. And even then, it wouldn't be an obligation. I think what you did was great. OP, this is why I don't think I'm the jerk. Because if my sister had told me Carmen needed school shoes, I would have gotten them for her before school even started. She knows she can ask me for necessities for Carmen if she's in a pinch, and I'll make it happen some way or another. But she didn't. Am I the jerk for financially cutting off my daughter and giving her 1 month to be out of my house? Fake names for privacy. I'm a mother to two. Zoe, who's 21 female, and Bea, who's 17 female. Their biological father was a narcissist and would demean Zoe and Bea. It took years of court battles, but my husband, Tim, and I finally got full custody when Zoe was 16. Zoe has been in therapy since my initial divorce. Zoe has always had a tendency to be demanding and cruel to others. I myself have gone to therapy and taken parenting classes to help Zoe. I've read books and tried every resource available. A big help was having Zoe channel those emotions into positive outlets, such as kickboxing. Zoe used to enjoy therapy, but called it a waste of time and chose to stop going when she turned 18. Zoe now refuses to find positive outlets for her emotions. Zoe weaponizes her experiences with her biological father and feels they give her the right to mistreat others. She lives at home rent-free while Tim and I pay for her education, $56,000 plus a year, car, phone, and all other expenses. Zoe refuses to help around the house. Asking Zoe to do any small chore, refilling our dog's bowl, turns into Zoe screaming and swearing while I have to de-escalate. Zoe believes she's entitled to our money and goes off on us because we're saving money for Bea's education as well, instead of giving it all to Zoe so she can have fun money. Tim and I left the house last Sunday for a doctor's appointment. I learned Monday from Bea that Zoe had gone on a rant about how I was a selfish jerk since I asked her to put a frozen meal in the oven because Tim was feeling tired and he would need food ready as soon as we got home. Tim is a cancer survivor. He completed chemotherapy at the beginning of the year. He is still weak and sick often, yet has continued to work from home to help support us. Zoe told Bea that Tim is a grown man. Why can't he make his own darn food instead of me doing everything because he's so useless? Hearing Zoe say that about the man who supported and nurtured her and was a father to her when her biological father didn't care to was my breaking point. When Zoe came home, I explained her car is still in her name and her last year of college has been paid already. I told her that she had a month to move out and the year's end to find her own insurance. We will pay for nothing anymore. Tim and I will no longer be treated as ATMs and burdens while providing everything for her. If she wants to act like she's an adult who knows everything, then we will treat her as one and let her support herself. Zoe will likely be staying with her grandparents. My sister is unable to house Zoe due to her lease agreement, but she's told me I'm the worst person she has ever met because you never turn your back on family, and I know Zoe's childhood with her biological father will always have changed her. But Zoe's trauma doesn't give her the right to mistreat others, especially the people who have helped and supported her more than anyone else. Am I the jerk? You tried therapy, classes, you financed her schooling. The only last-ditch effort you might have made would have been to warn her that she was on her last legs here. If the worst thing that happens is that she has to live with her grandparents, you're definitely not the jerk. Not the jerk. She too, to paraphrase her, is a grown woman and has been a legal adult for 3 years. You're giving her a full month notice and she has a soft landing spot with her grandparents, not to mention college already paid for. I hope this is a wake-up call for her about how to treat others. She may have some trauma to deal with, but as she grows up, she'll realize almost everyone has their own crap to deal with, and it doesn't give you an excuse to treat people poorly. 5-year-old asked if this is the phone number for a retail store. This happened about 30 years ago. I was definitely the jerk in this situation, but in my defense, I was 5. My family's home phone number was 1 digit off from a sporting goods store in my town called Joe Jones. Naturally, we'd get a fair number of calls from people with the wrong number. We had caller ID, so my parents would see an unfamiliar number on the ringing phone and say, "Looks like it might be someone trying to call Joe Jones again." They'd pick up and say, "Hello? I'm sorry, you have the wrong number," and then just hang up and say, "Yep, Joe Jones again." Now, since I was 5, I failed to realize 2 key things about this situation. 1, Joe Jones was the name of a store, not a person. Easy mistake to make. 2, that it was different people calling each time. Since my parents could always tell when it was a call for Joe Jones, I thought it was always the same number that they kept recognizing. I had only ever used the speed dial, ask your parents what that was, to make an outgoing call, so I assumed some friend of Joe had just misprogrammed their phone to call us instead of him, and was really lazy about fixing it. I was annoyed this person kept bothering us. Then came the day. My dad was at work and my mom was home with me. She was busy with something when the phone rang and asked me to answer it. I went over to the kitchen phone, reached up to pull it off the hook and said, "Hello? Hi, is this Joe Jones?" I was finally talking to the person who had been bothering us. I summoned up all the righteous fury young me could muster and said very sternly into the phone, "No, he doesn't live here. Stop calling us." My mom jumped up and snatched the phone from me to apologize to the caller and smooth things over. After she hung up, she took the time to talk to me and make sure I understood what was actually going on and how to be polite over the phone. She wasn't angry. These days, I always try to be polite on the phone regardless of the situation. I think back to this incident as being the day I learned that lesson. Thanks, Mom. I miss you. Call the police on me for doing my job? Sure, Karen. Have at it. I work for a water company carrying out repairs on burst water mains on an on-call basis of 1 week every 2 months. This particular job happened about 8 years ago. We get a call out that a major pipe feeding a large housing estate had burst and needed repairs ASAP. We head to the yard about 11 p.m. at night to collect our gear and get the plans and drawings of other utilities in the area of the work. We arrive on site, set up the traffic management as per regulations, speak with the inspector that called us out for an exact location of repair, too much water to mark in the usual way. We set up our barriers and work lights around the work area. We get out our still saw and cut out a couple of meters of tar, ready to start breaking the tar out of the road. Just as I started the jackhammer, Miss Sleepyhead comes stomping down the street in her slippers and dress gown, looking rather perplexed. Took my ear protection off to see what she wanted. I could tell it wasn't to offer us a coffee. She then proceeded to tell me, "You can shut that thing off and buzz off until it's daytime." I explained that it was emergency work and that we couldn't have 600 properties get up and have no water in the morning, so it has to be completed now. and our work was fully understood by the council and the police. We then get the usual things like, "Do you know who I am?" I refrained from telling her that I knew exactly who she was. She's an irritating jerk who is stopping us from working. She then starts turning the air supply off so I can't use the jackhammer, which was ever so slightly annoying. She then stated that she knew the police chief inspector and would have me arrested if I carried on. I said that I have to carry on as per my emergency work order, and if she carried on obstructing us, I'd have to call the police to get the job finished. Needless to say, she did it again and said, "Call who you like. I'll have you arrested and sacked by morning." By now, I was tired, cold, and wet and starting to get slightly irritated by her actions, so cue malicious compliance. I go back to the van and ring the police to explain that we're carrying out emergency work and we're being prevented from completing it by one of the local residents and explain what she's doing to stop us from working. She stomps off in her now soggy slippers and I poured a coffee. About 40 minutes later, lights appear in the distance, so I thought, great, just what we need so we can get done and recharged by 6 a.m., hopefully. Mr. Sergeant and Mr. Constable arrive and come for a chat to find out what the heck is going on. And his words, "Why are we doing it after midnight in the first place?" So I proceeded to explain that the water main had burst and we needed to get the supply restored by 6 a.m. to save between 1,500 to 2,000, only a slight exaggeration, people having no water in the morning when they get up. He then realized the job needed to be done and toddles off for a word with Miss Sleepyhead. Before long, we can hear the shouting from down the street. It then goes quiet and he comes back down to us to explain that the lady was a sandwich short of a picnic, a British euphemism for a wacko, and that they were going to have to hang around in case Miss Sleepyhead started playing stupid games. So we fire up the compressor and start jackhammering again with my back towards the police car to save anything pinging off in that direction. A few minutes later, the machine driver toots his horn to get my attention. Miss Sleepyhead had only come down the road carrying a piece of timber, lumber for you American folks, and was in the process of getting arrested for disturbing the police. I honestly laughed so hard. Who the heck is that stupid when the police are around? Just in case anyone's interested, we were back on by 5:30 a.m. and had a coffee from Miss Sleepyhead's neighbor, who was highly amused because he had seen the whole incident out of his window. His only disappointment was his surveillance cameras didn't pick up the video and he only had the audio to share with his mates. Insane Karen grandmother tried to steal my apartment. I'm 29, female, and I've been dealing with this for some time, but recently this became ridiculous. My grandmother, who's the worst person I've ever known, one of the most frustrating, entitled, narcissistic, condescending jerks on earth. She believes that she's the matriarch of the family, the highest authority that we all have to obey. So she's done a lot of things to all of the family members over the years, and recently, I became her main target. A few months ago, she organized a family meeting at her house. Believing it was just a family meal, we all went. When everyone was there, she revealed her true intentions. It was a trap. Apparently, someone told my grandmother that I was dating a girl, my girlfriend, and basically she told everyone in the family. At that moment, I hadn't even told my parents about this yet. The following 30 minutes were a non-stop humiliation in front of all of my family, calling me a failure, a sinner, and how embarrassed she was that all her church friends would find out about this. The following weeks, she was nothing more than a constant headache, endless calls and text messages telling me that I was a disgrace, that I should stop fooling around and correct my life. She even lectured my parents, demanding that they correct me to make me quit my job and find a husband because that was the right thing to do and what I should be doing. Also, she took every chance she got to say how evil and selfish I was for ruining her good image. Last Saturday, she outdid herself. While I was at my apartment, there was a knock on the door, and when I opened it, I saw that it was her. By this point, I was no longer trying to hide my displeasure from her, and I just said, "Ah, it's you. What do you want?" Without being invited to come in, she just walked right into my house, began to look around the place with an obvious gesture of disgust and disapproval on her face, and then she turned to me with that look of superiority, as if she were doing me a favor just for being there. She told me that she had already given me more than enough time to reconsider and correct my life, so she was there so that I could apologize to her. I just laughed sarcastically and told her that she was crazy and that she could go now. She then started lecturing me with the same speech again, but I didn't just take it this time. I interrupted her and let out all the things I've wanted to tell her for a long time. That she was a dumb old jerk, that she was not an authority figure to anyone, that her presence alone ruins our day, that nobody can stand her, that she's such a horrible grandmother and mother that she should not find it strange that none of her kids love her or visit her unless she forces them to. I knew I had hurt her by the way she tensed her face and how she tried to hide the tears in her eyes. It was then that she said, "Enough. I can see that you don't understand the good way, so I will have to correct you the old way. Give me the keys to this place. You will return to your parents, and you will be grounded until you learn to obey and do as I say." I still had the keys in my hand from when I opened the door, to which she extended her hand, as if waiting for me to give them to her. I laughed out loud. This was too ridiculous, and I couldn't take it seriously. And apparently, that made her so mad that she lunged at me, trying to grab my keys. We struggled, and there were screams, things falling out of place. It was pretty chaotic. A couple of the neighbors came out to see what was going on, and when my grandmother saw them, she started shouting that I was a thief and I was trying to rob her house. Obviously, they didn't believe her. They were my neighbors, so they knew me. They separated her from me, and when she saw that they did not believe her and that I would not obey her, she threatened me with, "Your parents will find out about this," and she left. Since then, she's been telling everyone how I insulted her and attacked her. We all know her. We all know she's a liar. She just makes everyone else's lives harder. If you don't like it, there are plenty of other teams that work remote. So this story is, as the majority of these are, the direct result of Manglement having no idea what or how their employees work. Background. At the time, I worked on an on-site desktop support team of about 13 people. These are your IT guys that typically wander around your workplace and go fix your computer in person. I had done this job for about a year before the lockdown started. When lockdown started, of course, 95% of my job's workforce was either moved to entirely remote work or a hybrid schedule. Now, what does that mean for a primarily on-site second-tier IT support team? Well, for one, it means that a lot of our workload shifted to being remote work. Secondly, it meant that if something did need on-hand support, we'd need to schedule that user to come into the office. And thirdly, it means that a lot of larger projects come to a grinding halt. Now, transitioning a workforce of thousands to remote work on a dime was, for all intents and purposes, a nightmare. We had to distribute thousands of laptops amidst multiple supply chain breakdowns and teach a pretty aged workforce how to use VPNs. Needless to say, we absolutely rocked it despite all of the hurdles. We spent a year plus of the lockdown managing hybrid schedules. Basically, for that entire time period, each one of us was on site at least 2 full days a week, and then coming in for an hour or two at a time for appointments with users, if they didn't fit into our normal days. This worked out for everyone. Almost none of our users were even regularly on site. We always had 2 to 3 people in the office at any given time for emergencies, and we smashed through ticket queues. Our team was heaped with praise on all sides. But this wouldn't be malicious compliance if that was the case, now would it? Malicious compliance. So, after having rocked support IT during lockdown and receiving praise from every department, Manglement remembers a project that we've been putting off: Lifecycle Replacement, LCR. Lifecycle replacement is the fancy IT term for replacing computers when they get too old. We were supposed to start a massive LCR right before lockdown, but due to some rather ridiculous moves on the part of Manglement, they dissolved the Lifecycle team into desktop IT. It got delayed. Now they're in full panic mode and demanding massive quotas of LCRs are completed each week, despite 2 mitigating factors. 1. We are not receiving enough computers in the first place to meet those quotas. 2. It's hard to force masses of employees who've had a taste of work/life balance to come into the office to replace a whole computer with their whole working lives on them. So quotas are not being met, and Manglement is beginning to sweat because their bosses are wondering why this thing was supposed to be finished a year ago and it's barely even started. Manglement decides that clearly desktop is to blame, and thus send out an edict that we are all to be on site 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, or else. Now, unfortunately, our whole team had gotten used to not having to pay for parking downtown every day, and we had realized that if the whole rest of the workforce is still working remotely, that us being in an empty building every day was completely pointless. We voiced our concern to the supervisor, who, being the dutiful mouthpiece of our mangler, immediately set up a meeting with the whole team and themselves. The meeting went a little like this. Coworker: so we're a little confused about this edict you've sent out, that we're having to be on site a full day every day. You guys have been praising our work throughout lockdown, and I think we've shown that we can responsibly manage hybrid schedules. Mangler: with people moving back into offices, we've determined there's a greater need to have your team on site, and with the ticket backlog, we need to make sure the manpower is there to support the staff. Coworker: but the backlog is due to us not having the equipment to distribute to the employees, as well as the majority of employees still working off-site. There's nobody around for us to regularly support. Mangler: well, unfortunately, these positions were always meant to be on-site. Me: so will you and supervisor be on-site all week as our main line of support? Mangler: our job positions don't necessitate us to be on-site, so we'll be coming in as needed. Me: to address your point about ticket counts, I wanted to point out that I pulled completed tickets for April before lockdown and April during lockdown, and we actually completed more tickets working a hybrid schedule. Mangler: look, this was always meant to be an on-site position. If you don't like it, then there are plenty of other teams who offer remote work. Me: so if we don't want to pay for gas and parking downtown every day, we're free to find other positions in the company that fit our needs better? Mangler: if you want to discuss this further, then you can schedule time to meet with me when I'm in the office next Wednesday. Needless to say, the entire team was furious. We had rocked during lockdown, been told how efficient we were, and then we were being punished because Manglement didn't want to explain to their bosses the concept of supply chain issues. I immediately began searching for another position in my company, and very quickly found one that utilized some of my more niche skills with a very cool supervisor. But it doesn't end there. Throughout the lockdown, our team had been whittled down to maybe 9 of the original 13 people. Once I left, that left 8. 3 more followed suit and joined the remote help desk team, leaving 5 original team members. Fallout: Manglement decided at that time, since the primary focus was LCRs, that they could just hire a bunch of low-paid interns to fill in the empty spots. Now, the second whammy to this whole shebang is that recently our union had a new contract coming up, and Manglement apparently didn't take much time to read the new contract, because the contract forbids using interns to do the work of full-position union members. So now Desktop Team consists of 5 original full IT employees and 5 interns who are only allowed to image computers. Their ticket queue still has tickets from June. Am I the jerk for sending an invoice to my wife's cousin after the wedding? I own a printing company that I run with my wife. Her cousin came to us and wanted us to do all of the signage, banners, guest books, life-size cutouts, etc. for her wedding. We do this all the time for friends' weddings and events, and we never charge. We're happy to help out, and it's usually a lot of fun working together to make some cool stuff. A few weeks before the wedding, her wedding planner tells us they need all the items by this date so they can set it up for the wedding. At this point, we hadn't received our wedding invitations and didn't even know when the actual wedding was. My wife texts her and tries to clarify when the wedding is and if we missed the invitation somehow. Her cousin replies and says, "Oh, we downsized the wedding and we decided to have like a close friends and family thing, and that they didn't have space for us in the small venue." My wife and I are pretty hurt and insulted, and on top of that, we've spent close to $2,000 on all of the materials. Her cousin and the wedding planner kept making tiny revisions to the artwork, had us print samples to see how it would look in person, resize several of the items a few times, etc. All that cost a ton of time and money, and we're a functioning business, so we either had to delay other orders or stay late and print her stuff on our own time. So I went ahead and billed her for our cost and said we needed payment before delivery, because I'm not going to chase her for payment for months or years after the wedding. We're not making money on it, just charged her for the cost of materials. So far, we've gotten threatening calls from the cousin, her fiance, some random members of my wife's family that I don't know, some of the groomsmen, etc., essentially calling us jerks. After the harassment, I'm considering charging full price or else we won't deliver the items. Are we the jerks here? Sorry, but I'm not going to waste my hard-earned time and money on someone who doesn't even consider us close friends or family. Not the jerk. They can't expect a wedding gift from people who didn't make the cut. Once you and your wife were cut, it became a business transaction, and you had every right to bill them and receive payment before delivery. Not the jerk. Tell her it's only free for close friends and family, because she has established you don't fall into this category. Distant family pays material costs, or full if you choose to charge that. Not the jerk. They used you. Look at how much money they saved. $2,000 is not a normal wedding gift. I suggest from now on, you ask to be paid, but give a discount. You shouldn't end up in the red because of a gift unless you can write it off. Ask yourself if they never intended to invite you and just wanted free services. Everyone sucks here. The cousin is a jerk for expecting free stuff for their wedding and then not inviting or uninviting OP. But OP admits that they let the cousin spend $2,000 in materials, even though they also say a job like this normally costs around $200 to $300. The OP also admits that they were at the awkwardly expensive stage, but got told that they weren't invited before they could cut the cousin off. They also say they prioritized this free stuff by either staying late or delaying orders. So not only is it a $2,000 gift, they also lost money on orders they could have done. The OP obviously can't just blow off a $2,000 expense, but they were justifying it because they got to go to the wedding? You don't give your cousin a $2,000 wedding gift unless you're rolling in dough. The OP needs to take some responsibility here for not cutting them off sooner. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the cousin? Please let us know. Always communicate clearly and always have them sign a contract, especially if you're dealing with family. Am I the jerk for missing my grandchild's birth to attend my other daughter's wedding? I'm the mother to two wonderful daughters, Sophia, who's 32, and Nicole, who's 26, and I'm really not sure if I was cruel towards Sophia for my decision or not. Nicole got married this year, and Sophia had her first child, which is my first grandchild. I've had a good relationship with both my daughters, and I've always tried to make sure neither of them felt like I favored the other, but I admit there were some rough patches with Sophia. When Nicole got engaged, she asked if I would walk her down the aisle since her father has never been in her life. I asked her what about her uncles or brother, and she said no, she wanted me. I was more than happy to agree and helped her plan her wedding. My daughter, Sophia, announced her pregnancy around the beginning of the year. The timing panned out that they would be due after Nicole's wedding, so she asked if I would be in the delivery room with her and stay with her and her husband for a few weeks after the baby was born to help out. I was very excited too, and since we already live in the same town and see each other almost daily, staying with her wouldn't have been a problem at all. Instead, Sophia went into labor almost 3 weeks early, the afternoon before Nicole's wedding. I missed Sophia's first call because I was already almost 2.5 hours away where Nicole lives and helping set things up and doing last-minute errands to help. When I called back, I found out she was in labor and she wanted me to get there as soon as possible. I told Sophia I would do the best I could and would let her know immediately when I'd be there. I explained the situation to Nicole, who understandably also wanted me to be there for her, but understood that Sophia wanted me with her too. Nicole was able to move her ceremony to the morning and make it a quick 25-minute ceremony, and there would be just a few hours gap between the ceremony and reception. I thought this was a good compromise that would let me be there for both of my daughters. I called Sophia and she wanted me to get there that night. I asked if her husband was with her and she said yes, so I asked her to please consider him as a second choice until I could get there. Sophia got upset and told me to forget about it. I got to the hospital early the next afternoon and missed the birth by a couple of hours. Sophia was so mad, she didn't want me to come in when she was moved to her room. I thought that was understandable and she would talk to me soon, but it's been a couple of weeks now and I've tried to apologize to her. I've talked to my son-in-law and he said they're both mad that I chose to ditch Sophia when she needed me most for a party. So I'm here asking an outsider's perspective if I was wrong to not go to the hospital right away. Am I the jerk? Edit. I did not stay for Nicole's reception. I left immediately following the ceremony. She still had to wait a few hours from the end of her wedding ceremony in the morning until her reception that afternoon. It could not be pushed back later in the day due to the reception venue having an event in the evening. Not the jerk. And I'm really surprised by the responses here. A wedding is not just a party, it's a once-in-a-lifetime event and almost by definition has parents there to celebrate, unless there's an exceptionally strained relationship. Childbirth is a medical procedure that usually only has 1 to 2 support people, and in many families happens 2 or 3 more times. It's nice, but not common or even expected to have grandma there. And it's not like you plan to attend one over the other. The baby came 3 weeks early. Your other daughter rescheduled her wedding in hopes of you making both work out. How anyone could assume you intended to prioritize one kid over another, or that people weren't accommodating enough considering what was done here, just baffles my mind. Not the jerk, not even a little bit. Her husband was with her. Exactly. When I had both of my kids, the only person with me was my ex. For different reasons, my mom couldn't be with me. It's called life. I don't understand her daughter having a fit. As someone who went into labor 3 weeks early, it's terrifying, especially as a first-time mom. I personally didn't want my mom there, but going through that without your preferred support person would be so scary. For now, I say no jerks here, because it's a difficult position. But why didn't you go home that night, then go back for the wedding the next day? I don't think you're the jerk, but in the same situation, I'd have made the other choice, and I can see why Sophia is furious. The jealousy and difficulty in her and Nicole's relationship aside, a first-time baby coming 3 weeks early is never good, and Sophia was probably terrified. In my opinion, she needed you more, and your lack of urgency to her situation implies you cared more about the wedding. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter Sophia? Please let us know. I'd actually consider it a good thing if Sophia cut me off. She sounds insufferable. Am I the jerk for forcing my brother to pay for the damage to my rental property after I told him not to worry about it? I own a cottage on a lake. It's been in my family forever, but when my grandmother wanted to sell it, no one in the family was interested except for me. It's a beautiful old A-frame with a massive deck, and I also have a small dock. I love spending time out there, but I work in the city, so I use it to generate income. I rent it out over the summer, and I even get renters over the winter. My area has excellent cross-country skiing, and the ice fishing is great. No, I'm not advertising. My brother asked me if his family could use the cabin 1 week this summer for their vacation. I checked which weeks it wasn't rented and offered him the cabin. My mom called me and told me he didn't make a lot of money this year, so I didn't charge him, but I did insist on all the paperwork being filled out. Liability waivers and insurance, that sort of thing. Well, on the last day, I got a call about a small fire in the kitchen. He sent me some pictures and it was pretty minor, maybe $3,000 to fix. Accidents happen and that's why I have insurance. So I told him I was glad no one got hurt and that I would take care of it. Lucky for me, I didn't have a booking for the next week, so I sent my handyman to do a cleanup, repair, and repaint. I ended up having to replace the stove. It was old, so I would have in the next few years anyway. Then yesterday, my son, who's in school in another province, sent me a video. My 2 nephews were doing some TikTok challenge. It isn't in the video, but they are playing with flammable stuff in the kitchen sink area. They were the ones who set the kitchen on fire. I was livid. I had been told it was a grease fire. I called my brother and asked him to explain exactly how the fire started. He lied. I told him I have the video and that I know his kids were playing with fire in my house. I told him he had to pay for all the repairs and replacing the stove. He said I was being unreasonable and that I already told him he didn't have to pay. I told him if he didn't pay, I was going to report an arson. He called our mom and told her I was taking food out of his family's mouth. He called me a selfish jerk for going back on my word. I explained that he'd lied and her grandkids had started the fire. She says they're just kids and that I make enough off of her parents' vacation home. In the end, she paid me the money and she said that it means she won't be able to help my brother with anything for a couple of years. I don't think I'm in the wrong. Am I the jerk? Edit. Have none of you guys ever paid for a fender bender on a car? You don't use insurance for little stuff. Not the jerk. Yes, accidents happen. My usual policy with accidents is the guest should offer to pay and the host should decline. However, this was not an accident. This was gross negligence. There is a difference. He also deceived you about the cause of the fire. You were willing to let him off, based solely on your belief that this was an accident. However, his kids were doing something stupid, grossly negligent, dangerous, and very disrespectful of your property. And he lied to you about that. Hit him for every penny, and don't invite them back. Not the jerk. He lied to you, and when you called him out on it, he still wouldn't fess up. All his and his kids' fault, and you owe him no sympathy. He needs to teach his kids that they can't get away with stupid stuff like that, and he needs to learn to supervise them like a proper adult. You shouldn't be expected to pay for their irresponsibility. Also, totally not a just kid situation. That's complete stupidity and disregard for other people's property. It's a crime. You're right to be upset at them for trying to cover it up. Well, what do you think? Should OP have charged his brother for the damage or not? Please let us know. Absolutely you should. If your goblin set my house on fire, you bet your butt you're paying for it. Entitled sister thinks she deserves my house because she has 3 kids. So my grandfather was a pretty wealthy man, and because of it, he and my mother had a rocky relationship and haven't spoken in over 5 years. My 2 sisters turned out just like my mother, a high sense of entitlement. Believe the world owes them everything, and my grandfather's money didn't help this. They expected my grandfather to pay for a lavish lifestyle. Eventually, he ended up cutting them off, which caused them to stop speaking to him. They even tried pressuring me to do the same. I refused. Me and my grandfather were really close. I spent a lot of time at the house. It was one of my favorite places in the world, and I am absolutely thrilled he left it to me. My grandfather was my best friend. He was the first person I came out to when I was 15, and his reaction is still my favorite. But he sadly passed away a few months ago. This wasn't a surprise by any means, as he had been battling cancer for years. Well, my grandfather ended up leaving everything to me and two of my cousins he was also close with. I got the family home, which is a beautiful 4-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom house with a pool and a hot tub. I was also left a good chunk of money, which will really help with student loans. One cousin got my grandfather's antique car collection. Not sure if it can really be called a collection, as there are only 3, but my grandfather called it that, so that's what I'm going with. The other cousin got my grandfather's painting collection, which was pretty big and has a few pretty expensive paintings in it. But seeing as she is an artist herself, I doubt she will sell them. I think she actually wants to donate a few of the more well-known ones to our local museum. My mother and sisters got nothing. Well, as you can likely guess, they freaked out. There wasn't much they could do about my cousin, as they didn't really speak to my family for other reasons. But with me, they flipped out. My mom was mad because this was her family home, and she thinks she deserves it. My sister thinks I should give it to her because she's married and has 3 kids, and she needs it more. She already has a nice house, by the way. This one is just more expensive. I do not want to give the house to her. My grandfather wanted me to have it. That's gotta mean something, right? And just because I do not have a family right now doesn't mean I won't in the future. Me and my boyfriend have even talked about it multiple times. Like I said, this place means a lot to me, and I want to keep it. My other sister has no interest in the house, she just wants some of the money I got. She recently got out of prison and is pretty much broke. I wouldn't have had a problem giving her some of the money if it weren't for the fact that before going to prison, she stole a lot of money from me and many other family members, including my grandfather. I'd think about getting some sort of a restraining order against them. Never underestimate the power of a Karen. Am I the jerk for not letting my niece use her iPad during our wedding? My wife and I got married September 4th, and this drama is still going on. We paid a lot of money for a videographer to capture our ceremony. We told everyone at the rehearsal dinner we would be having everyone turn their devices off for the ceremony just so that there wouldn't be any distractions. My brother pulled me aside later on to tell me that his daughter, who's 4, would need to have her iPad to get through the ceremony. Otherwise, she would be really noisy and wouldn't sit still and might ruin the day for us. I told him no, she wouldn't be using it because there's a chance she may turn the volume on or something, and I really don't want to take that risk. I thought that was the end of it, but the next day, my brother, who is also my best man, came to me and said that his daughter was having a hard time today and that she would need her iPad. I again told him no. He said that if she didn't have it, she would make a fuss, and the missus wouldn't want that ruining her big day, now would she? And that kind of upset me, because yeah, it's her day, but it's also mine. I'm marrying the woman I love, and we both made this no devices decision together. I told him if he couldn't respect it, then his daughter could wait outside with either him or his wife, but her iPad wouldn't be in there. He was annoyed, but we left it at that. And then it happens. Middle of the ceremony, we hear, "We finally found the perfect house!" And then some fumbling as my sister-in-law is trying to get the iPad to shut off, and my niece starts to whine. Some ads started playing as my niece was playing a game. My wife and I were annoyed, but we, along with everyone else, laughed it off and continued on. During the reception, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law ran up to us, saying they didn't know the volume was up so loud, and they had my niece apologize for it. My wife said it's done and over with, and it was rude of you to do. My bro said it wasn't fair, so I said that it wasn't fair sister-in-law allowed it, seeing as we already talked about it, and that going against what we had already asked of them and the iPad was a major jerk move, and that them not apologizing, but having their daughter make a big show of doing so was sending the wrong message, seeing as she's 4 and she doesn't even understand, and that it was them who allowed it to happen. My brother said that it wasn't that deep, and that I'm being ridiculous. Then the rest of the reception was kind of awkward, even during the best man speech. He tried to make a joke. "Yeah, that was my daughter's iPad making the noise. She likes to be a rule breaker. And it just made my wife and I angry. I've said very few things to him since this happened. My parents are starting to think I'm the jerk for not just moving on and for waiting for him to apologize. Am I the jerk? Edit. I keep seeing this come up about how if we didn't want this to happen, then we should have had a child-free wedding. We essentially did in the fact that we told everyone, hey, people will be drinking, so if you want to leave your kids at home, that's fine with us. And most people did. My niece came and 4 other kids, one being only 7 months old, and then a 5, a 7, and a 12-year-old. It also helps that naturally, both sides of the family are late-night partiers, so to leave the kids home wasn't a huge offense. And for those asking what we would have done had she instead started fussing and crying, that's fine with us. We would have rather had that instead of a 30-second YouTube ad going on, then an awkward scramble to get it turned off, which threw off the flow of our vows. If she started fussing, that's something we could have laughed about, and her mom would have taken her outside. Instead, we had all the guests turning to look at them in a very awkward display of, you were asked to do one thing. And yes, we still laughed, but for us, it wasn't the same. It really wasn't. As for offering up other solutions for my brother and sister-in-law to use to entertain their daughter, respectfully, that's not my job. I'm not her parent. We told them no devices. We had several options, as people have mentioned, and we are not her parents, so it wasn't on us to offer up alternative suggestions, seeing as we were a little more preoccupied with getting everything in order to be married. Maybe I shouldn't be so bothered by this, but I am, because it was the lack of courtesy and apology on my brother and sister-in-law's behalf. My niece apologizing doesn't really mean anything because she doesn't understand what she did. Her mom handed her the iPad. My niece is 4 and doesn't understand that what happened was rude. She doesn't grasp that yet. It should have been on my brother and sister-in-law to apologize. Am I the jerk for calling my brother-in-law lazy in front of everyone? Last weekend, I invited my husband's 2 brothers and their wives to stay over the weekend and have a birthday party for my husband. My husband's youngest brother arrived on Friday night with his wife and stayed in our guest bedroom, while the eldest brother offered to smoke some pork overnight and bring it to the party. The poor guy was up all night cooking it, and I told him I didn't want him to lose out on his sleep over it, but he insisted. So, on Saturday, I get up early and I'm cooking and baking all day, and my husband, his brother's wives, and his eldest brother are all helping out. Everyone is busting their tails, except the youngest. He's sitting down in the living room playing video games for hours without a single offer to help. Even the few times I hinted to him that I needed help, he came up with some BS excuse why he wasn't going to be able to help out. Fast forward to the party. Everything came out great. All the food was good and everyone was enjoying themselves. And the jerk brother makes a joke about my cooking to everyone at the party. At this point, I had had enough of him, so I told him, "You're one to talk. Everyone helped with the cooking and to put this party together except for you. You're a lazy and entitled parasite." Now, I know that my retort wasn't the most diplomatic and that I shouldn't have embarrassed him in front of everyone. And my husband got mad at me and said that I was a jerk for calling him out in front of everyone and that I needed to apologize to his brother. I told him I don't owe him an apology at all. Am I the jerk? I feel like one after the fact. I know I should have kept my mouth shut, but I still don't think I should apologize to him. Edit. For those who say that I shouldn't have expected people to help out, I will add that it's an unwritten family rule that when a family member invites others for a dinner or a party, everyone is expected to contribute, either by helping out or bringing a dish. It's always been like that for as long as my husband can remember, and I've adapted to their custom. Edit 2. My brother-in-law always never contributes. Not just at family gatherings, but with anything. My husband's family is very close-knit. Actually, everyone is awesome but him, and they're always helping each other out. He only asks for help, but never helps anyone. In my husband's own words, he always finds a way to worm himself out of helping. Edit 3. My brother-in-law said in front of everyone that my food tasted like prison food. For those wondering if in fact the food tasted bad, it didn't. It tasted delicious. Everyone was complimenting it, and some requested the recipes for some of the dishes, which is what prompted him to make that unsavory joke. Karen neighbor threatening to sue me for hurricane damage. We bought this home last year. We live next door to some retired boomers. The wife, Buddy we'll call her, was very friendly at first. She would always want to talk with me about gardening, and she liked talking to my daughter. However, her dog was insanely aggressive. I couldn't do anything in my yard without the dog barking, growling, and trying to jump the fence at me. I couldn't even talk to people because this dog would bark for an hour straight until I gave up trying to enjoy the yard and just went inside. We're currently saving up for a new roof. It will cost around 5 to 10 grand, and we're going to have all the gutters replaced too. Hurricane Fiona hit and blew our gutters off. It was terrifying. In the morning, my husband did a walk around and saw the gutters in their backyard. While cleaning up storm debris, the wife, Buddy, approached me saying my gutter dented her car and will cost her several thousand to fix it, and that she'll have to pay a $1,000 deductible. I didn't know how to respond because I didn't see any significant damage. Mind you, she would regularly brag to me about how she bought her home in the 80s, that her $70,000 mortgage was paid off and had a new roof, new driveways, and painted her roof, doors, and window framing a tacky black color. She also lives in a duplex, and it completely clashes with her neighbor. I went inside and discussed what to do with my husband. He said right now, nothing. I called my insurance company and let them know what happened to our roof and gutters, and that my neighbor wants to make a claim against us and is insisting she has photo proof we were negligent. A few days later, she comes up to me demanding my insurance, my number, and my last name because of the damage to her car. I take a look at the car, and I don't see any damage aside from a golf ball-sized dent on the hood. I asked if it was from the gutters falling, and she insists that it is. I asked how does she know. She said in the morning that she came outside and found them on top of her car. So, during the hurricane of the decade, apparently the wind that snapped off my gutters around 2 a.m. landed on her car, then waited patiently for her to wake up. I gave her my insurance info anyway and tell her to figure it out with them. She then begins going off on me and how I intentionally let this happen, that I'm trying to hurt her home, and this is my fault, how she'll have to sue my insurance and me, that it will cost thousands to fix and I better pay up, and then throws in how she's been nice to my 4-year-old. She then says I should have ripped my gutters off before the hurricane. I just tell her I'm not interested in conflict with her and to go through my insurance. She then tries to tell me how my falling gutter also damaged her heat pump, the one that was currently on and looked fine. After this, I went outside and I took photos of her car, heat pump, and noticed no significant damage to either. Yet here she is threatening to sue me for thousands. I would have even agreed to help her with the car repair if she wanted, but instead she jumps to suing me, and I don't know how she's going to stop being nice to my kid. Update. So I called my insurance and explained to them what happened. They'll get back to me, and if I have to pay damages, then we can do so. But I don't think the damage was $5,000, and her heat pump was definitely not damaged by my gutter. I called city bylaw enforcement on her dog. I got fed up with being nice and understanding with a crappy dog who I always worried would jump the fence one day and hurt us. So compliance said that they would talk to her and that they will mostly go down the educational route. And they said they'll go to her home, assess the situation, and just talk to her about how she has 6 months to get her dog under control or they'll start sending her tickets. She tried to come to my door to argue with me again. I told her she needs to talk to my husband, a military man who is not nearly as patient as I am, or keep talking to insurance, and I filed a claim and told them to assess her damages too and that I'm closing the door now. She tried knocking again. At this point, I called the non-emergency police line and told them she keeps demanding money from me, and she's insisting the hurricane damage to her home was my fault and that she won't leave me alone. So compliance from the city showed up to talk to her about her dog. Then the police officer showed up and told her to leave me alone, that if she keeps harassing me, he will come back again, and that his own mother couldn't have predicted a tree would crash on her deck. I couldn't have predicted my gutter falling off. She apologized, and the officer said she needs to give me space, and I told him if insurance determines I need to pay up, I will, but only if they say so. So hopefully she'll listen and leave me alone. She's a very Karen type person who felt embarrassed to have city compliance and a police officer at her door. Maybe don't harass your neighbors and I won't have to retaliate. I'm done being a victim of mistreatment who just sits by and takes it to keep the peace the other person clearly doesn't want to maintain. Am I the jerk for letting my roommates evict themselves? I, 28 female, own a house. I wish I didn't because I inherited it from my grandmother, whom I would have preferred to have it back. It's an older house in a mature neighborhood in my city. It has a huge yard, a garden, and a detached garage large enough for a couple of cars and an RV. It also has an in-law suite where I live. I started living there when I started university, and I love it. My exit leads to the backyard and my garden. After the estate was all settled, I was left with a little money and a fully paid-off house. I'm the baby of all the cousins, and I was an oops baby. I'm 17 years younger than the next youngest. I decided that I would keep living in my area and just take on short-term renters to help me cover with expenses. I also plan to allow any of my nieces and nephews who went to school in my city to live with me. So far, only one nephew has, and he was well behaved and moved out when he finished school. I found a couple that wanted the entire upper floor for 1 year while they got settled from moving across the country for work. No big deal. I have 3 nibblings graduating the next year, and only one might go to school in my city. So I let my property manager set up a 1-year lease. My city does not have a minimum rental increase. This is important. So after 6 months, the problems start. The wife got pregnant, and they like the house. They have not found a house they want to buy. They want to keep living here, but they don't want a roommate. So one day the husband catches me and says that he's talked to the property manager about renting the entire house and that I might want to start looking elsewhere for a place to live. I check with my guy, and yep, he wants the whole house. So I talk to my lawyer because I don't want any problems. As long as the increase is 1 year after tenancy and I give 3 months notice, there's literally no limit on the rental increase. So I tell my property manager to raise the rent for the ground level 50%. They have 5 months notice of a rental increase, so I'm in the clear. Now I can hear them fighting about having to find a new place, which I don't get because I was clear in the lease that it was only for 1 year, and I gave them a good price because they had excellent credit and rental history. The real estate market in my city isn't crazy. They should be able to find something to buy in time, or at the very least, somewhere else to rent. I've talked to my parents about this, and they said I'm being sort of mean. I don't think I am. I have a plan for my home, and it does not involve me moving out. I have a garden that I worked with my grandmother on my entire life. I have a yard with raspberry bushes my grandfather planted for his kids and grandkids. My dog likes having a yard to play in. I could have told them it's my home, but it's not their business. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. When the husband told you to start looking, he told you exactly what he'd do if the roles were reversed. He'd kick you to the curb. Funny that they did not even respect your seniority and wanted to kick you out of the house you occupied beforehand. You can get rid of them with no guilt. Also, the fact that she's pregnant is of no importance here. She can manage her stress by herself. Not your problem. You're the jerk. Going against the grain here, but as the owner of a house you rent out, you'll always be the jerk in my eyes. The housing crisis is real, and with everything else going on in this world, if you have the audacity to try to capitalize off of people who just need a place to live, you're a dirtbag in my eyes. If you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem, and I'm really disappointed to see so much support for you in these comments. As Redditors, we're supposed to be aware of these issues and not encourage people like you to take advantage of others the way that all landlords do because you're money hungry and greedy. I have zero respect for anyone who owns a property that they rent out. You honestly could have donated that house to a charity, foster program, halfway house, etc. The possibilities are endless. But because you're money hungry, you choose to capitalize off of good, hardworking people. Thanks. I'm legit triggered now, and I need to go take my meds, which cost me a fortune because of people like you. Sometimes the commenters on Reddit are a very special breed of stupid. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the roommates? Please let us know. I hope once they move out, you do a big reveal showing them you were the owner all along. Homeboy really deserves it. If you find that job, take it. Okay, I will. To keep it vague, my old company was a fairly large real estate investment trust, roughly $10 billion. I was part of a very niche M&A shop that was typically the black sheep of the company. It felt like anything we did was just a hassle overall, and it wasn't really worth the company's time to entertain these acquisitions anymore. I was a part of the minuscule-sized deal team, 3 of us, including myself, that closed over 60 deals per year, with 45 to 50 active deals at one time. Typically, each deal took about 4 to 9 months from start to finish, depending on the seller's competence level and organization. This was my first job out of college. I knew the career path I wanted to take was going to require long hours and no vacations, but typically in finance, the salary will reflect that commitment. Well, for this job, I was making $52,000 a year, working 80-hour weeks, $12.50 an hour gross pay. After my first full year, I went to the VP of the department and requested a 20% raise. I was told the basic inflation spiel and got a 2% cost of living adjustment. I think it's important to note here that after I left this company, I found out the same VP received a $2 million bonus. Fast forward a couple of months. Every year, the company has a meeting where the entire company, around 300 people, meet at a hotel. They do this to give updates as to what the company has done so far, where they're going, and for team building, of course. In reality, this was a multi-million-dollar event to pat the backs of the executives that really don't do much in reality. As a part of this event, anyone in the company is allowed to send in anonymous questions to the CEO, and he will read and respond to it if he thinks it's something worth talking about. Just before this company event, 5 people had resigned from other departments in the company. Every one of them almost doubled their salaries at their new jobs. So I decided to ask the question, how do you plan to retain talent when there are other companies offering 2 times the money with half of the workload? The CEO decided this question was hilarious and read it aloud, laughing, and responded, "If you find that job," with finger quotes as if it wasn't real, "you better take it. Goodbye." After being treated pretty terribly for the last 1.5 years, including missing my grandfather's 88th birthday partly due to a last-second PowerPoint that ended up not even being used, I decided that was the final nail in the coffin. I spoke with one of my recently resigned coworkers about his new company, and soon after, a recruiter from his company reached out to me. I go through the interview process and got the job. I more than doubled my pay when taking the 20% end-of-year bonus into account, and I even got a $10,000 signing bonus. The story doesn't end here. As I gave notice to my wonderful manager who taught me everything I know, she first told me she hates me because she's going to have to take over my 19 current deals. But then, shockingly, she confides that after 7 years of working at the company, she's ready to move to greener pastures as well. I decided to call the recruiter that reached out to me originally and ask if there are any other positions open at my new company. She says yes. They interview her, and she gets the job as well a month later. 2 down, 1 to go. The final coworker standing was not hard to convince, as he saw 52 deals suddenly pile onto his desk while he was already underwater doing the same 80-hour weeks as I did. I worked with him to spruce up his resume and get the wheels turning. After 2 interviews, he was given a verbal job offer with an in-writing letter expected the next week. All said and done, all 3 of us ended up doubling our old salaries. The old company is now scrambling to replace us with over $100 million worth of deals that will grind to a halt when my last coworker makes his departure. My new gig does not feel like real life. I have a fantastic boss that respects my time outside of the office, to the point that he gave me 2 weeks in between jobs to unwind after my previous role. My workload is 30% of what I used to do as well. My old manager got the same 2-week treatment and is currently enjoying her time off and will start in the middle of October. If only I was given that 20% raise. Am I the jerk for not inviting the next-door neighbor girl to our backyard party? We live on a block filled with kids. Every now and then, I like to get a bounce house and throw a little backyard party for them. I threw another one last week. I want my sons to have good memories with their neighborhood friends because they all go to different schools. I told the parents about the party, and that was lieu of an invite. I didn't invite the 8-year-old girl who lives next door. Why? My goodness, she screams over everything. It's not even a scream, it's an ear-piercing screeching. I cannot stand it. I can tune out the loud sounds from my 7- and 9-year-olds and their friends, but not that girl screaming. It's like she sees a bug, she screams. She thinks someone is chasing her, she screams. She jumps off a swing, she screams. I'm pretty sure it's for attention, but I can't spend my Saturday listening to it in my backyard. Like I'd end up yelling at her, and I don't want to do that or come across like an angry dad. Her parents did ask me if something was wrong because she wasn't invited. I bluntly told them that I just can't take the screaming. They said she's no more louder than any of the other kids. No, she's much louder. I told them I didn't want to discuss it any further. If and when she can stop her screaming, then I'll be more than happy to invite her to my backyard parties. They were deeply offended. I'm not looking for suggestions to abate her screaming or possible explanations to her screaming. I just don't want to hear it or be around it. Not the jerk. It's your backyard and your party. If you don't want to invite someone, you don't have to. Exactly. All these "you're the jerks" is mind-boggling. Why should OP take the time to figure out why the kid screams? Isn't that what her parents are for? No one is entitled to a good time on someone else's behalf. I think a lot of the "you're the jerks" on posts like this come from kids who are the type to shriek all the time, or parents who have managed to convince themselves that all kids scream 24/7 because they don't want to think that their kid is seen as the annoying screamer. Honestly, I said everyone sucks here because Come on, when you have kids and they have a friend over, you remind the kids of the rules at your house. One warning, we don't scream here. If I hear that again, I have to ask you to go home. Parenting doesn't mean you parent someone else's kids, but as a kid host, you definitely let them know the rules and consequences at your home. Not the jerk. Her parents are the jerks here. It sucks for the kid, but maybe this will wake mom and dad up to real-life consequences of not setting behavioral boundaries for their kid. Letting kids scream constantly, aside from being inconsiderate to everyone else in earshot, is just plain bad parenting and unsafe. 8-year-old is 3rd grade for most kids. That's definitely old enough to be taught basic limits and the reasoning of screaming is for emergency situations only. Unpopular opinion, and I'll accept any downvotes people may leave, but you're the jerk. You invited every single kid but her. She'll see all the kids there and she'll know that she is the only one not invited. I understand that you don't want to deal with an annoying kid, but it's kinda mean. It would be different if she was a bully or was mean to the other kids, but excluding her because she's loud isn't nice. And again, she literally lives next door. I hope the parents take her away that day so she won't see the other kids have fun and wonder why it is that she wasn't allowed to come. Maybe she'll figure out if she stops screeching she can go. I feel this could be a learning experience for her. Having her parents make excuses isn't helping and is probably part of the problem. 8 years old is old enough to know about appropriate volume levels in my opinion. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the neighbors? Please let us know.
Reddit boy and I can't stand brats screaming either. That's why we now live hours away from civilization and our only neighbors are rattlesnakes and scorpions.
It's pretty easy to get along with them too.
They don't have screaming kids, they don't play loud bass, no cars with engines that are way too loud. Wildlife is way better than people.
Am I the jerk for not kicking my best friend out of my wedding? About 3 months ago, I, 25 female, got married to my husband, 27 male. I've been hearing about this from my in-laws non-stop. My husband has a younger sister, Alice, who's 22, who in my opinion is a total brat. Alice had some type of childhood sickness, but she overcame it. However, her parents were extremely lenient with her to the point where she cannot be corrected in any form without it being a big deal. She's been let go from multiple jobs because of this, and she doesn't have many friends and always has to be the center of attention. At my other sister-in-law's birthday, their parents got Alice a gift just in case she got jealous. I'm an only child, and the only sisterly figure I have has to be my best friend, Marie. We met in 3rd grade, and since we're both only kids, we instantly clicked. We are fiercely protective of each other. Husband and I decided to have a summer wedding, and to my surprise, Alice shows up wearing a lacy white dress. If you told me she picked this out of a wedding catalog, I would have believed you. Between the wedding and the main reception, we had cocktail hour. People kept asking me about Alice, and I was becoming visually annoyed. A lot of people thought she was my husband's ex instead of his sister. I could tell the situation was upsetting Marie, and I watched Marie walk over to my husband's family, greet them, and on the way back she tripped and fell by Alice while holding a glass full of red wine. Alice ran into the bathroom with mother-in-law following her, and his dad came up to us and started to demand that Marie leave. I told them no, Marie is a lightweight and it was a mistake. Husband backed me up and said that since Marie is so thin, she can't handle as much as others, but we'd make sure she sobered up before the reception. At the reception, Alice was wearing a beautiful green dress brought to you by Ross, and Marie magically felt better. My in-laws have been bringing up the incident non-stop, but I have a hard time feeling bad, even though I know it wasn't an accident. Not the jerk. And your best friend is awesome. This is what it's about. Do not feel bad or guilty at all. Your in-laws need to quit coddling their brat that they created, and they need to quit being so childish to still bring this up. You should tell them to grow up and move on. Kudos to your hubby for backing you up. OP. I have a lot of people commenting and DMing me saying that my post is fake because it's so common. What you guys fail to realize is that it's so common because people are crazy and entitled. There are so many narcissistic people who can't let anyone else shine in their presence. My sister-in-law is that type of person. I've seen her cry because she didn't get a turkey leg during Thanksgiving dinner at the ripe age of 20. Am I the jerk for being honest that my dad made me pay for my own art lessons as a kid? I'm 15, female. My mom and dad divorced when I was a baby. I spent most of my time with my mom and every other weekend with my dad. When I was in elementary and middle school, I went to an art class hosted by Mrs. Annie on Saturdays. In 4th grade, I asked my dad if I could go on his weekends too, and he told me that if I wanted to go on his weekends, that I would need to cover both the cost of each lesson, $12 for 4 hours, plus $5 contribution towards the DirecTV recording feature since he had to miss his TV shows to take me. I was able to go 3 times on his days using money I had saved from holidays. I told my mom that I was sad because I didn't have any more money left to be able to go to Mrs. Annie's on Dad's weekend. My mom didn't realize Dad was making me pay for my own lessons and flipped out on him. From then on, she would pick me up on his Saturdays for art class. We haven't had time to go to Mrs. Annie's since I got into high school, but I still do art and go to online lessons whenever I have the chance. Dad had a party at the house with a bunch of people from his work. I thanked him for dinner. He said he wanted me to stay at the table and talk to his work friends, but I told him that I needed to finish a school project and went to my room. Later, one of Dad's work friends came up to me and told me that I should have done what my dad wanted me to, and I should have had more gratitude towards my dad because on top of raising and supporting me, he's the reason why I'm an amazing artist. Dad showed his work friends my art and said that I was an amazing artist because of him and all the expensive art lessons that he paid for. I told the work friend that my dad has never paid for any of my art lessons and how when I was a 4th grader, he refused to take me to art lessons unless I paid the $12 fee myself and gave him $5 to contribute to the DirecTV recording feature. His friend apologized for the misunderstanding, and I forgot about it until Dad started lecturing me last week. The work friend told all the other coworkers that Dad never paid for my art lessons and tried making me pay for them. Some of his coworkers now only talk to him for business reasons, but most of them are making fun of him and saying stuff like, "Ah, that's so expensive, but we can have OP save up her lunch money so she can cover it. Right, Daniel?" My dad. My grandma and Dad's girlfriend agree with Dad because I'm not owed art lessons, and me being bitter about it is no reason to try and mess up his work reputation with what I said. My mom and stepdad said that I did nothing wrong, and Daniel shouldn't have told lies in the first place. My sister, Tori, said my dad deserved to be embarrassed anyway. Tori hasn't talked to my dad in a long time. So now I'm conflicted about if I should have said what I did to my dad's work friend. Edit for clarity. Dad's coworker came up to me while I was refilling my water bottle in the kitchen and living room area. It felt weird that he said anything at all to me, but he never came into my room. Not the jerk. You aren't owed art lessons, sure. He didn't need to provide them, as much as that sucks, and we all wish every kid could get the extra enrichment they want. But your dad doesn't get to take credit for the work you're doing, especially if he didn't support you in the process of getting there. He doesn't get to take credit for providing you with something that he didn't actually provide you with. Even though he apologized, the work friend is a jerk too. What right does he have to be lecturing OP about anything? He's her dad's work friend, not even a family member or a family friend. He's got some nerve going up to a 15-year-old and telling her to do what your dad says. To be honest, I think it's the $5 for the DirecTV recording that pushed them over that edge. Ignoring the lies for a moment, making your kid pay for their own extracurricular can be considered a parenting strategy. Asking them to pay for your DVR for your shows is not. Not the jerk. Dad's a cheapskate and a crappy parent, and a liar, so why should you be trying to maintain his reputation? Also, I just want to say his work friend has an inflated sense of ego. To come up to you and tell you that you should be a better, more grateful kid to your dad? You didn't lie, you just told the sad truth. Dad should have kept his mouth shut instead of getting braggy. Am I the jerk for telling my sister to find a babysitter instead of dumping her kids with me? Honestly, I can't believe the whole situation came down to me having to make this post, but it did. My oldest sister, who's 41, and I, 23 female, have been somewhat estranged for years. It began when I was 18, shortly after I received my autism diagnosis. The diagnosis caused a noticeable shift in the way she treated me. I went from being the sister with a few quirks to the difficult one who had no hope of a decent future if she didn't have someone to baby her. She also feels that I'm not trustworthy after a couple of incidents regarding my mental health shortly after high school. Since I started dating a friend, who I will call O, 6 months ago, my sister has gone off the rails. From what my family has said, my sister has a problem with O's religion, which is something he's pretty lax about. The problem my sister has with my relationship with O has escalated dramatically. I've noticed that each time O and I plan a date, my sister needs a babysitter. I find this odd as their youngest son is 6 months old and still dependent on my sister. The other 2 kids, who are 7 and 5, are at the age where they need supervision, but I trust my niece to watch her brother if arrangements can't be made. Yet, my sister insists that I take care of her kids, despite the fact that she could have our mother or aunts watch them. I finally put my foot down and told her that if she expected me to babysit, she must give me prior notice. I also told her that she would have to pay me $20 for the entire night. This proposal sounded reasonable, and my mother agreed because she felt boundaries had to be set. My sister was upset about this suggestion and attempted to pull the relative obligation card. The stunt my sister decided to pull last week was the last straw. O and I were supposed to go to dinner at a restaurant we had a reservation for 6 weeks in advance. I was getting dressed when my sister showed up an hour and a half before O was supposed to pick me up to drop off her kids. To say I was upset is an understatement. My sister knew the restaurant had a long reservation list but didn't seem to care. Our mother was already out with friends, so nobody else was at home to watch the kids. Instead of canceling my plans, I told my sister she had to find someone else to babysit or stay home with her kids. My sister was livid, calling me horrible names and accusing me of caring more about my boyfriend than my family. I slammed the door in her face, telling her I wouldn't deal with her until she acts like an adult. I also reminded her about the previous rules I had said about babysitting her kids. My mom and other sister are on my side in the situation. However, the rest of the family thought I was immature and that I should be grateful to spend time with my niece and nephews. I don't see what they see, but I could be wrong. Not the jerk. If the rest of the family are upset by you sticking to your previous agreement regarding watching your sister's kids, by all means, they can volunteer to watch your sister's kids with no notice. It's only a problem because you were inconvenienced, not them, which is hypocrisy. Not the jerk, but stop telling your sister about your dates. Also, there's no way a 7-year-old can watch a 5-year-old without supervision. It's one thing if mom needs to run to the bathroom for a few minutes, but she shouldn't be by herself for extended periods of time. Daughter-in-law steals my grandson's money, so I'm suing her. Hi, I am a grandma and I own a pretty good business in accounting. I'm not filthy rich, but I surely have a good amount of money and I've set aside a lot of money for my grandson for college, or for a house if he decides not to go to college. Every year for his birthday for the past 8 years, I've given him around $800 a year for Christmas and his birthday so he can enjoy himself. It's quite a hefty sum of money, but he is a great kid and I believe he deserves the money. He's 15 at the moment. Well, recently he came forward and told me for 5 years that my daughter-in-law has stolen a lot of money from him and some from my son as well. It turned out that she was spending a lot of money on herself and decided to pretend that my grandson's money would be going towards college funds. It was usually through gift cards, so how would it even go towards a college in the first place? Not only this, but apparently he was barely even fed and didn't get basic necessities a lot of the time. 6 years ago, she broke up with my son and dated a man whose salary was more than enough to make sure my grandson was getting what he needs. They weren't in poverty. I was furious. Not only was the money I gave my grandson to have fun being used by someone who I didn't even like in the first place, but my grandson was being neglected when they could have given him the basic necessities. I recently emailed my daughter-in-law, telling her how much she owes me, and if she doesn't pay it back by the end of the year, I'm getting my lawyers involved. Well, she was furious and started using the fact that her boyfriend is a military sniper as a way to threaten me into dropping the charges. I told her I refused to do so and ignored her after that, knowing if she continued to threaten me, all she's doing is incriminating herself. My other son, who is also an employee of mine, said I was being too harsh on her and I should have just let it go, and that I already have enough money as it is to pay him back. Am I the jerk? You sure you want me to take part in the go-kart race? Okay, boss. A few years back, I started my first job as a mechanic and was informed of a mandatory monthly kart race in the local track, which was promoted by my boss and the owner of the company. He didn't care if you enjoyed it or not. He booked the time slot and we all had to show up after working hours and paying our own ticket to drive. It was supposed to be a team-building exercise, and I could see the boss really liked race cars through the various pictures and trophies in his office. During the week, in anticipation to the event, boss would motivate and participate in setting the mood for the upcoming race. It was the only topic that week, and I was told by colleagues that this was really important. I knew that on the evening of the race, I had to pick up my girlfriend, and that would clash with the race. So a couple of days before, I told my supervisor that I would not attend the race. It was after hours and on my dime anyway, so I didn't think it would be a problem. Some 20 minutes later, I'm summoned to the boss' office, and he's not looking happy. He tells me that building the team spirit is one of his priorities and that I'm new there, so I was to give a lot of focus to this monthly event if I want to keep working there. because it was part of the core culture of the company. I really needed the job, so I just said, "Sure thing, boss." On the evening of the event, I drive to the kart track and, upon arrival, I see my colleagues all in jeans and t-shirts and my boss in full ballerina attire. He had racing overalls, racing boots, gloves, and even a custom helmet. It dawned on me the reason for the event and why so much attention was given to it. Kart racing was his thing. With about 15 racers, I asked to start dead last. Boss man listens to me talking and intervenes in front of everyone that we were there to race and not to just drive around slowly. Up until that point, I wasn't really paying much attention, but I decided to comply and show how much the core corporate culture was important to me. Starting from last, I proceeded to overtake all the other karts, including Boss Man on the outside of a fast corner. Overtaking on the outside is often seen as a bold, arrogant move. After just a few more laps, I reached him again, and as I was about to lap him, he went into the pits and stepped down. I duly won the race, and as I left the track into the bar, the real team building event, someone tells me that the boss had left. At the bar, the topic of the evening was how I had outraced everyone and how the boss, who had won all races since ever, was livid with my performance. Too bad for him. I guess I forgot to add to my resume that I had raced karts competitively as a kid, so I knew what I was doing and shattered his Ricky Bobby dream. After that, I was always courteously invited, but never again required to show up to his events. I went a few times, but arrived late on purpose, so I would just take part on the bar thing and not the race. My Karen neighbor keeps cutting my roses, so I call the cops on her. So I, 25 female, have lived in my house my entire life. My parents moved and gave it to me when I turned 21. Ever since I was born, we've had roses in our yard. Well, I recently got a new neighbor, 31 female, and she is apparently allergic to my roses. She lives right next door and won't stop complaining about my roses. I don't want to get rid of them. I think she should have considered that I had plants when she first went to buy the house. It's not like it was the cheapest option or anything. I live in a pretty expensive neighborhood. A few days ago, I came home from work and found pieces of my rose bush on the ground. At first, I thought nothing of it, but it kept happening. I decided to get a camera in my front yard so I would know what was going on. I came home yesterday and checked the cameras, and there she is. Clear as day, you could see my neighbor, wearing some mask, chopping away at my bushes. I was obviously outraged when I saw the footage and went up to her door and threatened to call the police if I saw her do it again. She called me selfish and rude and said that I should have taken the roses out because she was allergic. I'm not getting rid of my roses. It's not my fault she's allergic and she chose to buy a house next to someone who grows roses. She said that she could get hurt, but I don't think it's my problem. Am I the jerk? Edit. So I called the cops last night, and I'm going to be pressing charges for trespassing and destruction of private property. I also asked her why she didn't just use some kind of anti-allergen, and she said she couldn't trust doctors with her diagnosis, whatever that means. Not the jerk. You need to call the police regardless and show them the video because she's not going to stop. I see a couple of things that your neighbor could be in trouble for. 1, trespassing, and 2, destruction of private property. Since you have video proof, this should be a quick and easy case. Please call the police and report it. Get an estimate of the cost of the damaged plants and take her to small claims court for replacement costs. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the neighbor? Please let us know.
I'd be petty and plant tons of more rose bushes right next to the fence line.
Am I the jerk for not letting my daughter use her college fund for a wedding or a house? Backstory. I, 43 female, have 4 kids. Elle, who's 22, female. Katie, who's 17. Cam, who's 15. And Isla, who's 5. And I'm also currently pregnant. Me and my husband, who's 50, started adding to college funds every month for each of our kids, pretty much as soon as we found out that we were pregnant. I won't say the exact amount, but my husband has an excellent job, so it's more than most. We never told our kids because it just didn't feel necessary. Elle got pregnant when she turned 16 and ended up dropping out of school. I was very disappointed, but I understood. However, I was under the impression she would return later, but she has no plans to. The dad stuck around, and now they have one more kid who's 3 and one on the way. They're engaged, but they don't plan to marry until they can afford it. They were doing okay financially for a while, but due to the market right now, they've been struggling because Elle can't get a job since she doesn't have a diploma, so we've been loaning them money. Katie is a senior and just got accepted into college. We'd been setting everything up, and obviously she knows about the fund now. Katie and Elle were talking, and she was telling Elle about the school, and Elle asked how she was planning on paying for it. Katie responded, "My college fund." I was in the room while they were talking, and this made me panic. We had just planned on splitting it between the remaining 4 since we knew they were going to college. Elle asked me if they all had one, and I wasn't going to lie, so I said yes. She got really excited and went to call her fiancé and tell him the good news. I was confused and told her she couldn't have the money. She asked why, and I said it was for school. She got upset and left my house. The next day, I get a call from Elle. She was crying and begging me to let her have the funds so she could finally afford a down payment and maybe even a wedding. I told her she could have the money if she went back to school, and whatever money was left over she could use for whatever she wanted. She got super mad and started yelling at me and saying it's her money. I told her that it was my money, and these were my decisions, and she hung up. Now we're being harassed by her fiancé's family. They aren't as fortunate as us, calling us jerks and a lot of other names, saying it's all going to go to waste if she doesn't use it. We're setting her up for failure, etc. Now I'm wondering if I'm the jerk, because my dad said we should just give her the money as we saved it for her after all. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I'm going to be downvoted a million times, but hear me out. You put money into a college fund for each kid. The whole purpose was to help with their education. It's a generous fund, and not everyone is able to do that for one kid, let alone 4, plus one on the way. She made other choices, and that's fine. Just because she was unaware of the college fund doesn't mean she can just collect it now after finding out. She was happy with her relationship until she found out, right? But can you find a compromise to smooth everything over? Say she gets her GED and 1 to 2 years in a community college or trade school, graduating with an AA or certification when the rest of the money is hers. Would that satisfy you and your husband? Plenty of stay-at-home moms have put themselves through nursing or dental assistant or hygiene school, for example, with only grants and loans, and did it through sheer hard work and determination. Her fiancé's family had absolutely no business sticking their noses into this. I find that appalling and disrespectful. They need to be told to butt out. I agree. Find a middle ground. She can't move forward in life without a GED, so set some conditions around that. Once she completes her GED, you will give her a certain percentage of the money. Once she completes an associate's or certificate program, you will give her the remaining amount. She should also qualify for financial aid. OP, not the jerk. But again, I think a compromise is the way to go. I also don't think expecting her to go to the traditional college is feasible. Everyone sucks here. Should she feel automatically entitled to the money? No, but that's about the only way she's a jerk. There's a whole flock of reasons why you are. You speak dismissively about the committed man who's stuck by her side through teenage pregnancy, another baby, and has asked her to marry him. You speak as if she's less than because of a mistake she made in high school. You say you're under the impression she would return later, but she didn't know about the education fund. So do you think maybe her lack of funding would have influenced her decision to not go back when she had a baby at home? You are also under an assumption that all your remaining kids will decide on further education. That's a pretty silly assumption. It's your money. You can do whatever you want with it. But as a grandmother, you think you'd be happy that your daughter wants to give her kids a home and 2 married parents. Edit. To everyone coming at me, check out a few more of OP's comments. It's not about money or education. It's about control. Not the jerk. It's not her money. It never was. And it was never a trust fund. It was money set aside to fund an education for her, and you've made it clear that it is very generously available to her to do exactly that. Frankly, as a 22-year-old high school dropout with 2 kids and a third on the way, at this point, she should be realizing more than ever, if she's matured at all, and based on her and her husband's struggles of the last few years, that going back to school and getting an education or vocational training of some sort is the best possible thing that she could do for her future and her family's financial stability. The fact that she doesn't see this, that she thinks you owe her something, and perhaps most importantly, that she thinks that money given to her should be spent on a wedding and perhaps a house, which later she likely couldn't afford the taxes and upkeep on, tells me that she's still making bad choices, only now she's making them as an adult with dependents. You are absolutely not the jerk, and I think it's actually important you stick to your guns here, for her sake. Tell her that the money will continue to be available to her to use for an education, which would help her in the long run far more than a wedding or a house down payment, but it isn't a trust fund, and it never was. You're the jerk. While you may have the legal right to withhold the money, this is not a thread about what you can do, but what you should do. Your daughter made some bad choices, but she can't unring the bell. And the entire purpose of a college fund is to help your kids to get a head start in life without the burden of crushing debt. Let your daughter use the money to buy a house. Let her use it to start a business. Let her use it to do something so she can get her life back on track. If you're dead set on it being used for college and nothing else, at least put it in a trust where she can use it later in life or her kids can use it later in their life. Consider also that what you're doing is making a large transfer of wealth to her siblings and not to her. This is one of the ways that estrangements occur. Be prepared for lots of fighting between you and your daughter, between your husband and your daughter, and between your daughter and siblings, all because you were insistent that the money go to college and not a house or a business. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter? Please let us know.
The money was saved for your college and to give you a good future. Not for you to have an extravagant wedding, which is a total waste of money, or for you to make a down payment on a house that you would end up losing because you can't afford it.
Pay your staff less than your colleagues? Lose them all. I'm going to try to keep this kind of vague because 1, I like the elected official as a person, just not as a boss. 2, I like what they're trying to accomplish in terms of policy. And 3, I don't want this to blow back on me because I'm still in this field. I've spent most of my career working for elected officials. Over the course of my career, I've worked for elected officials at the federal, state, and local level in progressively more involved policy roles. In between, I've done some higher-paying private sector jobs, but I have twice taken pay cuts to return to public serving, working for electeds because I genuinely love the work. The flip side of that is that it's been hard to afford to live in my area on that lower salary. Earlier this year, I was still making less than my last job after 2 years in this office. In early spring, we were talking with one of our colleagues on the shared staff, and she made an offhand comment about how our office had the worst pay of any office for our legislative body. She ended up sharing information about how much other offices pay their staff with our whole office. Turns out, she was more right than she knew. Our office had some of the most experienced staff of any office, and bar none, the lowest pay, even relative to less experienced offices that were less active. Our highest paid staff, other than our manager, didn't crack the 40th percentile of the floor, despite 20 years of experience. I topped out in the 30th percentile for pay with 8 years of relevant experience. I would estimate the average is closer to 3 to 5 years experience for my level of pay. Colleagues I had worked with previously, who I knew had 3 fewer years of experience, were making 20% more than I was with similar or less involved responsibilities. So I did a full analysis of the pay on my floor relative to experience and set up a meeting with the elected to discuss salary, which did not go well. I was told that aside from annual increments, there would be no pay raises, and essentially that I should be happy I had a job. The fact that I had been loyal was irrelevant, as was the fact that anytime there was some weird issue we wanted to explore, I was able to find a solution. Me making less than colleagues in other offices with less experience was not their problem. I was told that if I wanted more pay, I would have to find something new. So after telling my colleagues about the ugly meeting, I did exactly that. I started applying for other jobs in our government, found one that I was highly qualified for, got an interview almost immediately, aced the interviews, and 3 months later, that hiring process is a joke, started with a 65% increase in take-home pay. After hearing about how poorly my salary meeting went, my colleagues didn't bother having their own meetings and just started their own searches. Come the start of the next legislative body after the elections, the only person left will be a new hire that started right before this nonsense went down and a new comms person who started right after I left. Anyone with institutional knowledge about how the body functions or any knowledge about the policy issues they care about has either left or has accepted a new position. My boyfriend is demanding I start tracking my runs so he can see my stats. My boyfriend and I are both runners, though we don't often run together because he's a morning bird and likes to run at 5 or 6 a.m. before he goes to work, and I'm a night owl who likes to run just before sunset. Nowadays, he loves tracking his runs. He has an Apple Watch and loves digging into his heart rate data, speed and time data, etc. He's using a training plan that he sticks to, and it sounds like he spends a lot of time on his runs thinking about technique in his training plan. I'll just go out and run at whatever speed feels good that day, for however long feels good that day. I'll go wherever looks cool or scenic. It really varies depending on my mood and energy level, but I usually run for 30 to 60 minutes, varying my speed a lot. I guess we always both assumed he was the better runner till we decided to do a half marathon charity race together, and I just had a much easier time. We ran side by side, but I just wasn't getting out of breath as often, and I ended up slowing down for most of the race to stay with him. And I was genuinely surprised, because I kinda just use running to help with anxiety. I don't care how the run goes, it's just nice to be outdoors and feel connected with my body. But my boyfriend really wanted to know how I did it. He thought I must have been doing something to train. I joked that I hadn't really. I just ran whenever I was feeling anxious or restless, and work's been making me feel that a lot recently. Since then, every time I've gone running, he's wanted me to use an app to track my route and pace and borrow his Apple Watch. I don't really want to do that. I feel like tracking and analyzing things would ruin my fun. But literally every time he's gotten annoyed at me, even saying stuff, in a kind of joking way, but still, that he talked to his running buddies and untracked runs don't count, and it's basically sacrilege. And on a more serious note, don't you want to know your progress? I said, how about we do a few races a year? I can see my progress that way because they time you. He said he just wants to know how I was training, to get some tips from me. And I told him, honestly, he should just smoke a little or have an espresso first, put a classical music playlist on, and go run wherever looks the prettiest. Maybe it's the enjoyment of the thing that really helps. But I guess he didn't want to try that because he just keeps nagging at me to try his Apple Watch. I feel like he's probably feeling kind of insecure I ran better in the race and is trying to make sense of it, so maybe I'm being too stubborn about not wanting to try it. Am I the jerk for not tracking my runs when my runner boyfriend wants to see it? What did I just read? Not the jerk whatsoever. Your boyfriend is insecure and envious of you. The fact that you had an easier time in the race probably hurt his fragile ego. Untracked runs don't count is utter BS. You don't have to track your runs. Stand your ground because you really don't want to ruin the fun of running. Not the jerk. Tell him to stop turning your healthy coping mechanism into another form of stress. He's being absurd. I'm guessing he's very competitive and wants the motivation of trying to beat your runs. The only other explanation is he wants to track you for reasons unrelated to running, like he's afraid of you cheating on him instead of running or something. Not the jerk. You run because it's fun and for a different purpose than your boyfriend. Untracked runs don't count is BS. I didn't track my runs when I first started because I didn't want to. I track because I'm training for races, but my untracked and tracked runs are still runs and important to me. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know.
Can't even go for a run these days without people trying to tell you what you're doing wrong.
Am I the jerk for choosing my nephews over my significant other's kids? I, 28 female, bought a house 2 years ago. It's a very spacious place, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and a big garden that I've been remodeling and making my own. My fiance and I have been dating for 4 years. He's 32, male, and has 2 kids from a previous marriage who are 8 and 6 that are really good kids. On top of that, I have 2 nephews, my sister's kids, that I absolutely adore and love with my full heart, who are 5 and 3. Now, my fiance and I have been talking about moving in together for about 1 to 2 years, but with the purchase and several custody fights he's had with his ex, it's been difficult. He and the kids were supposed to be moving at the end of this year or the beginning of the next, but sadly, my sister and her husband passed 2 months ago, and my nephews were left alone. I knew I'd be asked to take them in, and I was 100% sure that I wanted to, because I love them and I wasn't willing to let them go into the system. But I talked to my fiance first. While he wanted me to take them in too, he didn't like that they had priority over his kids. Since I currently have 4 bedrooms, 2 would have to share. And I was against it no matter whom they were, because I don't like the idea of cramping kids into a room. He said it was okay that my nephews could share a room and his kids could have the other 2. I said no. Then he didn't like when I offered for us to move to the basement so that all of the kids could have the rooms, with the idea of my nephew having my room since he's the oldest. Ultimately, as selfish as it was, I decided it was my home and I'll do what's best for my nephews, and due to lack of empathy, we were no longer moving in together, and that we could either plan to add 2 or 3 more bedrooms to the house after we marry, or he could go, because my nephews needed me more right now. So I moved them in, decorated their bedrooms as they liked, and call it a day. I'm still getting texts from him and his family, we haven't broken up, about how I could have made it work, because those kids see me as a mother figure, which is true, and I abandoned them to accommodate my nephews, which is also true, sorta. He called me a jerk, so I don't know. Not the jerk. Red flags all over here. He actually thinks deprioritizing 2 kids who just lost their parents is the right way to go? My guess is that he will always think his kids should be number 1. Cut him loose. And this bedroom situation would just be the start, I bet. He'd have let his own kids do what they want and always be prioritized over the nephews. Not the jerk. Your nephews just lost both of their parents. Where was your fiance's empathy and sympathy for the two kids who just lost both of their tethers to the world? His family is right. You could have made it work if he had been able to get out of his own way. What you offered was absolutely reasonable and entirely workable. Your partner can either graciously take what you offered or not. But yes, you made it workable. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her fiance? Please let us know.
Fiance's definitely the jerk. It's not his house, so it's not his decision. I would have suggested his kids share a room and her nephew share a room. Then the other room will be a guest room.
Am I the jerk for lying to my girlfriend about the pizza I made being gluten-free? My girlfriend, 24, female, works as a model, and she has an incredibly strict diet. Virtually everything she eats is organic and gluten-free, so it makes very difficult to cook for her. We take turns cooking for each other. At first, I tried to look on the bright side and appreciate the fact this would get me to eat healthier. But there are only so many times I can eat salads and sushi for dinner. Last week, I was at my breaking point and decided to make some homemade pizza. I'm Italian. Now, I've made gluten-free versions before, but I find that it tastes gross, so I went with regular white flour. The original plan was for me to eat a bit of pizza while she was out and to make us a couple of Western omelets for dinner. But she came home earlier than expected and caught me pulling the pizza out of the oven. She was so surprised and happy that I made pizza for dinner that I didn't have the heart to tell her that it wasn't gluten-free. A couple days later, she figured out that I lied and accused me of being selfish and unsupportive. I tried explaining to her that she's gorgeous just the way she is and that eating regular food now and then won't change that. I also brought up my concerns about her feeling the need to fixate on her diet when she already has over 10,000 followers on Instagram. This literally brought her to the verge of tears because in her mind, it makes me unsympathetic to the beauty standards expected of her. Am I the jerk? Edit. I did not make my girlfriend sick. She found out because when she was looking for gluten-free flour a couple days later and couldn't find any, she confronted me about the pizza and I confessed. Also, she does not have any medical condition that requires her to avoid gluten. Edit 2. I don't think that a lot of you guys realize that I wasn't trying to deceive her intentionally. The main reason why I said it wasn't gluten-free was because she was excited when she saw the pizza, and I didn't want to take that away from her. You're the jerk. If you don't eat gluten and then you do it, it will give you bowel troubles, even if you're not officially celiac. You made her sick, even if only temporarily. That's not okay. Yeah, this is important. Once you stop eating gluten, it becomes harder to tolerate it. You should never lie about what's in someone else's food. You're the jerk. Never ever lie about what goes into food you're offering other people. The proper course of action would have been to tell her the truth and maybe suggest she just have a half a slice to enjoy the taste and hold her over until those Western omelets later in the day. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that her success is built on handouts and she doesn't get to make comments on other people? I, female 32, have a friend who we'll call Ellie. She's also 32. I've known Ellie since we were around 7 and our mothers are good friends. Ellie has had a very, very privileged life. Her dad is a lawyer and her mom is a dentist. So as you can imagine, Ellie had a lot more luxuries and opportunities than your average person. She grew up going to private schools, having private tutors, going on fancy vacations every year, etc. I won't go into too much detail, but I definitely didn't have a life that was anything like Ellie's. Ellie never had to get a job until she went into residency and medical school when she was 26. When we finished high school at 18, Ellie initially went to business school for 2 years before dropping out, then pursuing medical school. Her parents paid all of her tuition and for all of her living expenses, so Ellie never struggled financially and never had to worry about money. Plus, her mother got Ellie volunteering opportunities so she could get references on her medical school applications. Ellie is now a qualified pediatrician. I'm glad she was able to find a career path she enjoys, and I'm proud of her for finishing school. I know medical school is no walk in the park. I myself am a veterinarian. A few weeks ago, we went to a town event and we bumped into some of my old friends from high school. We chatted for a few minutes, and one of them proudly mentioned she's finishing nursing school. When we went to my house after the event, Ellie made a very rude comment about my old friend, saying that,
I bet she was just too dumb to go to medical school,
and went on about how great she is. I told Ellie that what she said was rude and uncalled for. Ellie said that it was the truth. I snapped and told Ellie, you only became a doctor by getting handouts. You don't get to make comments about other people. Ellie started yelling at me and telling me that I'm a jerk for undermining her hard work and that she still had to work for where she is now. I told her that I know she still had to work hard, but most people don't have parents who can pay all their tuition and living expenses, and she had it easier. Ellie called me a jerk again and said I'm ignorant and said that she still had to work hard. Not the jerk. There are plenty of people who are intelligent enough for medical school, but can only dream of becoming doctors due to barriers in place. A lot of medical schools have rules against students having jobs during their studies. Ellie sounds naive and sheltered. Her comment was extremely rude and unnecessary. Nurses are literally essential for medical establishments to function. If she keeps this attitude up at work, she's not going to have many friends. Unfortunately, when it comes to higher education, intelligence and hard work frequently aren't enough, so her comment isn't even true. Am I the jerk for not wanting to talk to my sister after she didn't even invite me to her wedding? So I, 19 female, have two half-sisters, Haley, who's 30, and Sarah, who's 32. Before my dad met my mom and had me, he was married to Mary, who's 60, and had Haley and Sarah. My dad wasn't happy in their marriage, and after around 15 years of being married, they filed for a divorce. 2 to 3 years later, my dad met my mom and they fell in love. My dad didn't want to start a relationship because he didn't want to hurt Haley's and Sarah's feelings, but eventually decided to have me with my mom, which didn't turn out to be a problem since Haley and Sarah were ecstatic to hear they're getting a baby sister. They also never had a problem with my mom. They like her, and my mom is always there to help them when they need help. I saw them a lot growing up, and our relationship was pretty good. Sarah was especially fond of me, inviting me to her place a lot and doing a lot of fun stuff together, like going to the movies, which is why I was devastated when she didn't invite me to her wedding. In 2018, my dad told me Sarah was getting married, and I was overjoyed. I know her fiance, and he's a really nice guy, and I was super excited to go dress shopping since I thought I would be invited too. I wasn't, because Sarah's mom, Mary, never wanted to see me. She's basically been ignoring my existence ever since I was born. My dad and sisters always took care so that I wouldn't run into her when staying at Sarah's place, for example. Sarah never told me I wasn't invited to go dress shopping. I found out by Haley telling me what a nice dress they picked out. I was taken aback, but didn't think too much of it. My sister's wedding was in Italy, and when my dad booked the ticket to go, I realized I wasn't invited since he only booked one. My mom had warned me after they got engaged that I probably wouldn't be invited and to not get my hopes up, but I didn't think Sarah actually wouldn't invite me because her mom can't cope that my dad moved on and had a kid with another woman. What hurt most, though, is that Sarah never told me I wasn't invited. No text, letter, talk, nothing. She just moved on with her life like it never happened. She never tried to talk to me about it. When I saw her at family gatherings after, she only made small talk with me, as if nothing had happened. Ever since then, I kinda detached myself from her and didn't go over to her place with my dad or anything. After a couple of months, I completely stopped talking to her because I noticed that my mental health was suffering, and I decided to do what's best for myself, which is going no contact and avoiding her at family gatherings or not going altogether. It's been 4 years, and my dad asked me to maybe talk it out with her. He doesn't want to pressure me to do anything, but he says that family is important and that he would like it if we got along. He also told me he never knew she never told me I wasn't invited, that she told him she had talked to me about it. He understands I'm upset and he doesn't want to get involved. He just told me how he felt. She's also been trying to reach out to me a couple of months ago by asking my dad if he could ask me to have a talk with her, which is why he brought it up in the first place. Am I the jerk for not wanting to have a talk to my sister since it's been so long? Should I just get over it? Edit. I didn't block her on my socials, so she could have reached out to me if she wanted to. She still can. Her number isn't blocked. I only unfollowed her on Instagram. Maybe I should add this wasn't a one-time thing. Her son was born in 2016, and I wasn't invited for his birthday party in 2017 because her mom was there too. I just gave the present I got him to my dad, who gave it to Sarah at the party. She later called me and said, "Thank you." I was a bit bummed out, but understood. Grandmother cancels out aunt. Also, because I saw a lot of comments speculating I might be an affair child and that's why Mary is so offended by my existence, I'm not. Disregarding the fact that my dad would never cheat and that my mom would never degrade herself to be a mistress, they met through mutual friends well after the divorce, and said friends are still in their life and have told me how they met 100 times. Additionally, my dad did stand up for me to her. He criticized her not wanting to invite me, but it was her wedding and they have a weird relationship, in the sense that they argue a lot because they're both hot-headed and stubborn. It's complicated and a lot to get into. I hope I cleared some things up, should have added them to the original post. Not the jerk. And I don't understand why it's up to you to reach out to her. Why hasn't she reached out to you? I don't think your dad getting involved in this is a good idea. Not the jerk. It's been 4 years and she didn't reach out to explain or apologize. And now your father wants to sweep it under the rug and make it your responsibility for something that hurt you and you had no fault in? She knew what she was doing was hurting you because she didn't even have the courage to tell you in person that you weren't invited. Yeah, no. If it happened for the wedding, it's going to happen when she has kids, and it might happen with your other sister as well. You don't owe her a talk. Your feelings are valid. If your father cared, he would have spoken to her back then. Not the jerk. I hate it when people tell the wronged party to be the bigger person and accept crap because family. Where was your family when you weren't invited to her wedding? Am I the jerk because I told my father if he wants to live with me, he needs to get a job and help out around the house? I, female 30, worked my butt off in high school to get a scholarship because my parents had made it clear that they were only going to pay for my brothers. I had to help my mom with all the house stuff, and any money I made, I had to contribute some to house expenses. I got a full-ride scholarship. I didn't tell my parents. They assumed I would be attending the local community college and basically being their caregiver going on. I packed my laptop, my clothes, and that's about it. I left for university and went low contact. I just kept in touch to check on my mom. Neither of my brothers managed to finish university. I got my degree and went to work. I went to work for an FAANG. I make good money, and I do not live in a city with a high cost of living. My dad and brothers blamed me for their failures because they had to fend for themselves with only my mom to do the housework, laundry, cooking, and grocery shopping. My mom finally had enough last year, and I let her move in with me. She gets to relax in my home, takes care of my kid, she walks my dog, and she's teaching my husband how to cook food from our country. She's living the life of Riley. My father and brothers are not doing well. My brothers work for my uncle's plumbing business with my dad. In a few years, they will be making good money, but they aren't yet. My dad says he deserves to rest like my mother does. He's my father, and my family is saying I should help him out. So I talked to my mom and made sure she was okay with it. Then I called him and said he could move into the apartment over my garage, but he would have to contribute to the household and do chores. He's calling me selfish, disrespectful, and ungrateful. My brothers have joined in. I've even received calls and messages from family in our home country telling me that I'm a terrible daughter. I gave most of my money to him from 18 to 14. I did all the chores along with my mother when I lived at home. I think that's enough gratitude and pay. Am I the jerk? Edit. I forgot. I give my mom money for helping even though she insists I don't have to. My husband and I also bought her a car so she can do her own thing and run errands and such. Thank you everyone for the judgments and advice. I just got off the phone with him and I'm shaking. I asked him if he was sure he didn't want the room above the garage. He said no, and I said that I understand, but it was all that was available. Then I hung up and I blocked him and my brothers. Not the jerk, but I'm not sure letting him move in is a good idea on any level. If he talks to you this way now, it's not going to get any better. Not the jerk, but why, oh why, do you want to invite your father back into your home or over the garage? You know he's going to impose on you, expect you to clean and cook for him, do his laundry, etc. Tell him to hire a housekeeper if he's suffering at home without someone to do all the work he apparently feels that he can't. If you want to help him pay for the housekeeper. A man, ideally. Not the jerk. Your parents chose to have you and not the other way around. Your parents should be helping you out. I applaud your mother. She sounds like a great help. However, your father sounds absolutely selfish to do what he wants. Just be careful that he moves in and suddenly can't work. Good luck. Not the jerk. Do not let your father come back into your life. Your brothers can sacrifice and care for him. Him coming near to you and your mother will only cause you stress and grief. My Karen mother-in-law demands to be the first person to hold my baby. When I, female 26, met my husband's, male 34, mom, I hoped for a healthy mother figure type relationship. She's okay, but she can sometimes be a little controlling given that my husband is her only kid. She tends to act super protective of him. When I got pregnant, mother-in-law made a request to be the first person to hold my son after he's born. She wanted to be in the delivery room with me, but I refused to let her. My husband said he'd keep her out of the room under the condition that she be the first person to hold the baby. I didn't agree, but didn't disagree as well, just stayed silent. The baby was born days ago. All my husband was worried about was having his mom be the first to meet the baby, but she was out of town attending a friend's daughter's wedding. He said she wouldn't be back until 2 days later. Mom and sister already came to help, and they held my son as they were helping me after my husband went back to work. I had nobody to help, and they were my go-to. Mother-in-law and my husband knew. They both went off and started throwing a fit, saying that I betrayed her and that I made a promise, then broke it. My husband tried to get her to calm down after she came home lashing out, but she scolded both of us, then walked out. He blew up at me, saying I messed up and violated the agreement we had. I said that mom and sister were helping me out and held my baby, so what? He got more upset and claimed I had no respect for his mom and her wishes and told me that I hurt her feelings and ruined her grandbaby's birth memory. I couldn't keep arguing. He called me unbelievably selfish and demanded I fix my mistake, but I wasn't sure what he meant by that. Like redo the baby's birth and have his mom be the first to hold him? He didn't like my sarcasm and said that what I did was sneaky and cold-hearted. He said he should have let his mom in the delivery room, otherwise none of this would have happened. They're both still salty about it and are sulking hard. Am I the jerk? Wouldn't the first person to hold the baby always be you, the mom? Your mother-in-law and your husband are both jerks. Not the jerk. Not the jerk, and best wishes for a speedy divorce. Exactly. OP is totally not the jerk. But consider this, you just had a baby. After 9 grueling months of pregnancy, right now is the time for you to be comfortable and supported so you can be stress-free. And instead of being comforted and having home life be made comfortable for you, your husband is arguing with you, stressing you out, making unreasonable demands, putting his mother's feelings over yours. Just think about that for a minute. And I would hesitate to even have a second baby with this guy and his mommy because they've shown you their true selves and the demands will be set in cement for the second. Not the jerk. It seems like your husband and his mom are under the impression that they have a choice in any of this. This is what we like to call wrong. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband and his mom? Please let us know.
This is why you avoid mummy's boys at all costs.
You want me to stay in my lane? You got it, boss. Some time ago, I used to work in a medical specialty office. It was ID, or infectious disease, as a medical assistant. Side note, I used to work in the food industry and was always told that I wouldn't ever contribute to society or do anything meaningful with my life. While I absolutely loved working as a chef and a baker at the time, I wanted to do more with my life and prove to myself that I'm not as useless as people made me out to be. Not that I believed that for 1 second, but in my culture, if you aren't a businessman or a doctor, you're lower than everyone else. It's pretty terrible, but that's how the culture is. I now live in the US and it's been pretty good. Back to the story. I had graduated top 3 in my class and was certified through the AAMA and scored in the 90th percentile, so I knew my stuff. But I've never worked a white-collar job in my life, so I was afraid that I would seem out of place. I did my externship at this ID clinic in my town and they loved my interpersonal skills. They loved my work and stated that I would be offered a job at the end of my externship. I was elated. I was so happy to have a job secured and have a foot in the door to the medical field. It turns out my blue-collar experience helped me relate with a lot of our patients and they appreciated my work more for it. As my time went on, my experience working in the medical field became less about the money and more about the people I can help with my direct patient care. They weren't just charts, MRNs, medical record numbers, and diagnoses. They were Jeff, who ran the local farmer's market, or Meg, who worked with kids at the Y. I cared for my patients, and our repeats would always look forward to coming back to see me and chat. I loved working with my patients. So at the end of my externship, I was extended an offer of employment for a decent amount of money. It was more than my other classmates were offered at their practices, but still not a whole lot. And I took it. I was to be made the medical assistant in charge of direct patient care. This meant checking in, rooming, dealing with prescriptions, performing and searching for labs, packing wounds, and doing dressing changes. Being officially a part of the office now, I was determined to work my butt off and show myself and my colleagues that I could do it. I continued to do my work and care for patients. However, over time, I would notice certain things that weren't in my job duties that I could do that would help care for the patients. Certain things like calling their doctors for updated orders or checking for records from local hospitals. Also helping patients find good home health or SNFs, skilled nursing facilities, generally the medical scheduler's job. This also included looking into insurance coverage, billing, and checking referral statuses, referral coordinators, among other things. Doing these tasks meant a bit more work on my end, but also meant the best care that I could offer for my patients. This went on for a year, and my patients were happy and willing to come to appointments. Apparently, not a lot of people like to come to a building that has the words infectious diseases in big print on its side. Then one day, out of the blue, I'm called into my supervisor. Young naive me thought, oh great, They see how hard I'm working and I'm finally getting recognized. Maybe they'll promote me to lead. Nope. My boss, Shelly, told me that I'm working too hard and sticking my fingers into too many pots. I asked where this was coming from, and she stated that I was staying more than 5 minutes late too many times, and it's because I'm doing too much work. She said, "We can't keep paying you all this overtime." I think I was maybe making 30 minutes overtime at the most. She said that's still too much. I'm doing too much work. I was baffled, absolutely stunned. I thought I was doing the practice a service, but she undermined the entirety of the last year's hard work I put in. I was frustrated and a bit upset, but tried my best to remain professional. So I asked her what she would like me to do, and the next words out of her mouth were ones she would come to regret. "Well, I see you're doing a lot of tasks that are meant for other positions. Maybe you should stop doing those and just stay in your lane." She then proceeded to write me up for trying to take advantage of the time clock. Insert Jim Carrey, alrighty then, and cue malicious compliance. I asked her to send me a list of exactly what my job duties are, which she was happy to do. It listed most of what I was originally meant to do, except it didn't include dressing changes and packing wounds. I saw this and immediately knew this would be trouble for my boss. You see, she was the only other medical assistant on our end of the office that was certified to deal with minor wound care and dressings. At this point, since I was the main contact for patients, that would fall onto her plate. So I told each of my patients that I won't be doing any of that extra work because it goes against the practice's wishes, and I was told not to. All of them understood, but it's tough to get patients to keep appointments when things are delayed. Not long after the order was issued, I got my first page for a wound pack. Excellent. One thing to note about my boss is that she absolutely abhors feet. And one thing to note about infectious disease clinics is that we dealt with a lot of diabetic foot infections, at least 2 or 3 a day. Doc wants to see how it's healing, so he removes the wrap and unpacks the foot. Spent a little extra time with the patient and now has to get to his next appointment. I'm paged by the doc to pack the foot, wet to dry. "No problem, doc. Let me get Shelly for you." He gives me kind of an odd look, but continues to his next appointment. Shelly gloves up, and as soon as she passes the threshold of the room and notices it's a diabetic foot, is holding back her gags and immediately sweating. I pass by the room and she asks for my help. As calmly as I could, I turned and said, "Sorry, boss. Packing wounds isn't on my list. Can't do it. Just staying in my lane. By the way, the 2 o'clock and 3 is a through-and-through foot infection. Probably should get that packed soon, too." I'm glad we were wearing masks because she couldn't see the massive grin I had on my face throughout that whole encounter. She tried to write me up about disobeying superiors, but I had spoken with my GM and she was behind me. Instead, she ended up getting written up for trying to put wound packs back on my list after she told me I did too much work. She ended up having to do part of the medical scheduler's job, part of the referral coordinator's job, and part of the billing office's job as she had let go one of our front desk staff because there was not enough work to go around. There was plenty of work. I was doing it. She didn't last long after that. The burnout got to her, and she stepped down from her supervisor position 4 months after that. They ended up hiring another super, and I left the practice shortly after I got sick. They told me to come back into work after 3 days, and still very symptomatic, so I told them I wouldn't endanger my patients like that and to shove it. Last I heard, they have an entirely new front office staff and they're perpetually short-handed. Should have let me drive my own path instead of staying in your silly lanes.
Why some bosses choose to punish their employees who work extra hard, I'll never understand.
Am I the jerk for supporting my mom not adding my brother's son into her will? My mom is getting older and wants to create her will. She's still capable herself for the most part and also has a lawyer, but she lives with us anyway, so I help her with a lot of things, including this. I have 2 teenagers. My brother has a teenage daughter with his wife of 20 years. However, they briefly separated a decade ago, and he has a son who's 9 from someone that he hooked up with during that time. They've always had a visitation schedule, and we, the extended family, have known him since he was a preschooler. But as of a year ago, he's living with my brother and his wife full-time as his mother passed, and is now more integrated into our family. My mom accepts his son as her grandson, as do the rest of us. My mom wants to leave a small property she owns to be split among the grandkids. The assumption is that when the time comes, they'll sell it and split the proceeds since it's not sentimental or easy or convenient to share ownership of it. My brother's 9-year-old son is the sole beneficiary of his mother's passing and is the sole beneficiary of his very elderly but very well-off maternal grandparents. The funds from his mother alone are considerably more than the property my mom owns. So my mother allocated him a token gift, but didn't think it made sense for him to be in the cut equally to the other three. It has nothing to do with him being born outside of the marriage or anything like that. My brother found out and demanded his son be cut in equally to the property. Not really because of the money, he knows as well as we do that the 9-year-old doesn't need it, and more because of what it meant symbolically for the 9-year-old to not be cut in. My mom repeated that it didn't make practical sense, but said if I agreed, she was willing to split it 4 ways instead. But I said no. I agree with her that it's illogical. Let's say the property is worth $200,000 when my mom passes. 4 ways, that's $50,000 each. 3 ways, that's $67,000 each. If we were talking about $200, I'd understand. But I can't justify taking $17,000 from each of my kids' futures for a symbolic gesture. Obviously, the exact amount will depend upon the market. $200,000 is just a reference point for current value. I told my brother that I don't think that was fair to my kids. He said I was being mercenary. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your mother wants to do what she can to give all of her grandkids a head start in life. The needs of the youngest aren't the same as those of the 3 older ones, and your mother is taking that into consideration. That said, perhaps your mother could leave a particularly sentimental item and a letter to the youngest that expresses her love for him and the reasons behind what she did. This is how I view it. The money is to help everyone in life, not a token of how much grandma loves them. I get the feelings behind it, and it's sad he lost his mom, but he's set for life. His half-siblings and cousins are not. Grandma wants everyone to be set for their futures in the best way possible. This is a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation, and Grandma should have just done it without telling anyone. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. It's never going to be equal when one kid is going to receive so much more than the other 3. He'll understand if he's not totally entitled. On the flip side, the other 3 are not going to be that understanding about giving up a large chunk of their inheritance to someone that stands to receive more than all 3 of them combined already. Equal is not always fair, and fair is not always equal. This comes up time and time again with inheritance because real life is far more complex and messy than theoretical constructs. Your mom's reasonings is not wrong, and your brother is the jerk for arguing with what your mom had already decided. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their brother? Please let us know.
Sorry, but your brother's a total idiot.
Yell at me for delivering? Well, time to get some exercise. Some years ago, I was driving pickups and deliveries, P&D, for a trucking company in Denmark. P&D is the part of the transport chain where you usually deliver small quantities to multiple customers on a route, kind of like a UPS or FedEx, but in semis or rigid box trucks. It was nearing the end of the day, and I had to deliver a trampoline to a residential area. Mind you, this is in Europe, so things may be a bit different than in the US regarding rules and regulations. It was a fairly new area with plenty of space, but I had to reverse in because there was no way of turning around. But no problem. The road was wide, and so were the corners I had to go around. I put my semi in reverse and started going backwards, and of course, I was delivering to the last house on the street. Now, the road climbed a bit and was about 600 or 700 meters long, but it all went fine. When I finally got to the end of the road and got out of my truck to unload this trampoline, some guy was already standing behind my truck and yelling at me. I was the biggest idiot on earth. How the heck could I even think of going in there with a semi? I could have run over someone in the neighborhood. No one was even out. I had absolutely no valid reason for being there and could get out of there right away. Instead of starting an argument with this person, I calmly asked him where he lived. He pointed at the house and said, "Number 74. And lo and behold, where was I delivering to? You guessed it, number 74. So I, again very calmly, told this man, "Well, in that case, I have a trampoline for you." "Oh," the man said. "Well, I would like if you could—" "But," I interrupted, "since I have no business being in here with a semi, I will be waiting for you at the end of the road," and pointed to the direction I just came from. Mind you, this is a big model weighing around 130 pounds, so you might want to bring a wheelbarrow. The joy it was seeing him come all the way down the road with his wheelbarrow, and then trying to get this 130-pound trampoline up in the wheelbarrow and starting his long, heavy walk 700 meters up to his house again. Priceless. Am I the jerk for not telling my sister I'm pregnant too, then not apologizing enough? Let me start by saying my sister, who's 36, and I, 34, female, have had a rocky relationship. I had a childhood illness that meant a lot of attention was focused on me instead of her, which she has resented me for. I admit that in my teen years and adult life, I've had some pretty selfish, attention-seeking moments, but that I'm still trying to work on myself because it's not who I want to be. In February, my husband, 36, male, and I found out I was pregnant. Even though I had health issues, I wasn't considered high risk, but we still decided not to tell anyone until the 12th week scan, including family, just in case. In March, my sister texts me saying that she's pregnant too. I called her and congratulated her, but didn't tell her I was also pregnant because of what my husband and I agreed to. This was grievance number 1, because she says I lied to her by not telling her the truth. As time went on, I didn't know how I was going to tell her I was pregnant too. I didn't want to steal her spotlight or take any attention away from her like I did when I had cancer, but I also admit that I didn't want us to compare pregnancies or have our parents compare us. I guess I didn't want to share my spotlight either. After the 12-week scan, we agreed to tell our parents, but because I didn't know how to tell my sister, I thought it best to tell my parents, then ask their opinion on how to do it. We had both sets of parents over and told them at the same time. This is grievance number 2, not inviting her. My sister knew something was going on and messaged my mom, and so I said I would tell her myself. She called me that evening and I told her. She asked, "So, you're ahead of me? Why wasn't I invited today?" I told her we wanted to tell our parents first, and I didn't know how to tell her, and she hung up on me. It's been 5 months. I've sent her a letter explaining my actions and a bunch of flowers saying I should have invited her with my parents, but she still blocked me on everything. She's had an engagement party that we weren't invited to, and she missed my mom's birthday and uncle visiting from a different country because I was there, so I can tell she's still livid. I think she wants me to grovel and try harder at apologizing, but I'm now upset at her behavior. It's reminding me of how she's been pretty nasty to me in the past and how she's previously reacted to any good news in my life. We've never really been close, and I'd say we're equally bad at not running to each other's aid. She didn't support me through my cancer, I didn't go to her housewarming, etc. I need an outside perspective, and I'm willing to answer any questions to understand if I'm the jerk and should try harder to apologize for lying to her and not inviting her to the reveal. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know.
So your sister wants to have nothing to do with you now. I'd consider that a win, to be honest. She sounds insufferable.
Am I the jerk for gifting one daughter a house, but not the other? So I, female 47, have 2 daughters, Belle, who's 25, and Elise, who's 23. My husband is a doctor, and I'm an engineer, so we are financially well off. While we don't make enough to be considered rich, we make enough to give our kids a privileged life. When my daughters were in high school, my husband and I realized we had around $150,000 each in savings for our kids' educations. We sat down and discussed with the girls about their college funds. Belle has always wanted to go to college, while Elise was more neutral about the whole thing. Well, in a few years, Belle got into a very good but expensive college and ended up wiping out the money plus some loans. She finished paying them off a year ago and everything was fine. My younger daughter never really cared much for college. She got a degree in business from a community college and landed a job with a company. As a result, she didn't really need to spend all the money we had saved for college, so I put it away. A few months ago, Elise was visiting me and she was complaining about a house she and her husband really loved, but was out of her price range. I felt bad for her and discussed it with my husband, who suggested I give her the college money. I thought over it and decided to, and gave it to her. She was very happy and cried a lot. Well, they finally moved into their house this last week, and Elise invited the whole family to come visit and see the new house. When Belle arrived, she was taken aback, since the house was large and in a nice area. She asked how Elise was able to afford it, and Elise offhandedly mentioned that I gave her half the money. Belle didn't say anything but got really quiet and didn't speak to me for the rest of the evening. I called her yesterday and asked if something was wrong, and she kind of exploded at me, shouting that I was showing favoritism by giving Elise the money for the house, and it was unfair. I tried to explain that it was the college money that she had already received, but Belle said that she had to take out loans despite our contribution, while Elise wouldn't have to worry about the house loans. I tried to explain my side, but she blocked me and must have told my sister because I got a call berating me for treating Belle less equally. My husband says that Belle is just acting entitled and to let it blow over, but I feel bad because it is true that Elise has no loans at all, while Belle was saddled with debt at a young age. Was I the jerk? Edit. Some people think this is fake because I'm not responding to comments. I went to work and was unable to check my phone for several hours. Just wanted to clarify. You gave both your kids exactly the same. How they spent it is on them. Belle could have gone to a cheaper school and achieved the same educational result. She chose not to. You are not the jerk, but eldest is the entitled jerk. Not the jerk. But parents of Reddit, for goodness sake, be more open and upfront with your kids regarding finances. How do you expect them to plan their life if they have no idea how much support they can expect from you? I think all the people calling Belle the jerk are wrong. The correct answer is there are no jerks here. You're not a jerk for giving the money to Elise, but Belle is also not the jerk for being upset that she didn't know that this option was available to her. Thankfully, where I live, university education is free, but I may have thought twice if my parents had offered up an option of tuition versus half a house. I may have chosen to take student loans myself, potentially at a better rate. I may have chosen a different school. I may have waited until I could pay. I don't think it's jerk behavior or entitled to point out that the goalposts were changed, but nor do I think you were the jerk for giving the money to Elise. She is the jerk for exploding and blocking the family and trash-talking them to everyone. I feel like the key thing that always comes up in these posts is that the conditions on what the money can be used for changed after one kid already spent the money. Belle may have chosen differently if she knew that she could use the money for a house. I don't think that makes OP the jerk, but it's understandable why she would feel upset. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Belle? Please let us know.
Belle is an entitled brat. You spent all the money your parents saved for you on college. Get over yourself.
Am I the jerk for pointing out my sister-in-law and her partner's poor financial situation? My husband, who's 40, and I have been trying to get pregnant ever since we got married. We had no luck for 3 years of trying to conceive, so we went to a doctor and found out that one of us has a problem. Allow me to not go into detail. Because of this, we tried IVF, but it was unsuccessful after 3 tries. We finally got pregnant last year, but I miscarried. So we made the hard decision of giving up and accepted that we aren't meant to become parents. Last week, during my birthday party, where we invited some friends and family members, my mother-in-law asked how the IVF is going, and I told her that husband and I are no longer trying. Given everything that we've been through, mother-in-law said that she understands and assured us that she supports our decision. Father-in-law also said some words of encouragement. I was relieved that everyone seemed to be so supportive. When my sister-in-law said something along the lines of,
"I'm glad you guys finally made that decision. God chooses only those who are up to the challenge to become parents, you know."
There was an awkward silence. Then she continued,
"You should not adopt either."
I should mention that sister-in-law and her partner have 3 kids, and she's currently pregnant with baby number 4. Her partner works part-time at a local supermarket, while sister-in-law stays home with the kids. So yeah, they're not in a good financial situation and have to rely on benefits to get by. I answered sister-in-law with, "Yeah, I'm sure God chooses only the right people to become parents. I wonder what the qualifications are though, because clearly financial stability isn't one of them." Another awkward silence before father-in-law changed the subject. Later that night, I got a message from sister-in-law calling me a jerk for looking down on them because they are poor. I did not reply, but I feel like a jerk because of what I said. Not the jerk. It's very telling that father-in-law changed the topic. You said what everyone else was thinking apparently. What she said was inhumanely callous. I'm so sorry. She's not the jerk, but it's a big assumption to say that about father-in-law changing the topic. It sounds more like everyone was uncomfortable. Not sure how you can assume that without knowing anything else about them. Not the jerk. Clearly, compassion and intelligence aren't on that qualification list either. Not the jerk. What your sister-in-law said was so vile. I'm not even a religious person, but I'm sure no God wants your sister-in-law to speak on their behalf. What she said was definitely not the words of a godly person, and you didn't deserve that kick when you were already down. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for what she said to her sister-in-law or not? Please let us know.
Your sister-in-law is pure evil.
Am I the jerk for letting my son play in the waiting room of the doctor's office? My son is 2. We're at the doctor because I'm about 98% sure he has an ear infection. We go to a doctor's office that doesn't have any sort of play area or anywhere for kids to kind of hang around. We go here pretty frequently, so my kids have the same sort of routine. You're allowed to roam the room without bothering other people or yelling. They like to do typical kid things like walking in circles around empty chairs or looking at the art on the wall and tell me what shapes there are. There was only one other woman in the waiting room. She was probably about 50 years old. So while we're waiting, my little son is doing his typical thing. Now let me add that when there have been other people, as long as he follows my rules, they don't seem bothered by it. So I thought it was going to be the same thing with this woman. My 2-year-old is walking around an empty chair near me and babbling. I promise it wasn't loud. It is unacceptable behavior to be loud in a quiet setting, and telling me things like star and circle. This woman begins to huff and sigh and seems very irritated. I thought maybe it was the wait time since it was taking a good minute for either of us to be called back. Then the woman kind of hissed,
I can't believe people let their kids act like that.
I asked her if she was annoyed by my kid, and she said,
Yes, he's so loud. He should be sitting quietly.
I told her, Ma'am, he's 2. He's not hurting anything or screaming. He isn't even near you. She got all huffy and told me,
You need to be a better mom and control your son.
Y'all, I was floored. About that time, we got called back, so I just got his bag and took him and went back. I'm not gonna lie, I really felt like crying, but it may be rude and out of place to let him walk around and talk about everything instead of trying to keep him in place. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. When he's sick, keep him close. You don't want him to infect others. And this is a doctor's. You don't want him to catch something either. You're the jerk. Little germ factory. If they're sick, they can infect everyone in that room. They can infect someone with a compromised immune system and get very sick. Sit the kid down with an iPad or a phone. You're the jerk. As a child-free person, I understand that kids will be kids. But you were at a doctor's office because he's sick. Letting him run around and spreading his germs is gross. Next, I would just bring some quiet activities for him to do. OP. Edit. I'm really feeling like a jerk now that we got finished in the doctor's office. He has double ear infections, but also RSV. I feel really bad for letting him walk around, and I pray that he didn't leave any sort of infection around that will get anyone else sick. Hey, Mama. The fact that you were so stressed about this incident and now you're worried about infection means you're a good parent. You're gonna have moments where you slip up. You're gonna run into jerk old people and rude jerks, and sometimes you may end up being the jerk too. But the fact that you care speaks more than anything. You're doing great. I hope your little one feels better soon. A double ear infection is awful on its own. And then RSV on top. Get some rest and snuggle your little, and don't worry about grumpy people. You're the jerk. Considering my husband nearly passed 2 years ago from RSV complications, I would be upset if I found out someone was letting their kid walk around the place and close to everyone. You're the jerk. Doctors' offices are not playgrounds. Your kid should not be wandering around babbling, even if it is quietly, at least to you. Sick kids don't understand social distancing and tend to wipe their hands and snot all over things and people. Try taking a bag of toys and books to the doctor's office to keep your kid occupied. My kids always preferred me reading the books. I would hold them and read out loud to them. Next thing, I'd have a bunch of them sitting in a semicircle in front of my seat. The receptionist always told me they were sorry when we'd get called to see the doctor because the waiting room was much quieter while I read. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know.
My answer would be biased because I despise kids. That's what happens when everywhere you move, you have neighbors who have those dumb kids that scream all day.
Karen tries to force me to sell my house and give her the proceeds. My stepchildren's mother wants me to sell my home so that they can receive 50% of the proceeds. I am refusing. She has told me that I'm hurting my late husband's kids and that I'm the jerk. My late husband, David, had 2 kids, Thomas and Megan. Their mother, Kelly, had primary custody, with David getting the kids every other weekend. Kelly was just a joy, dragging David into court at every opportunity. If David found $1 on the street, Kelly would drag him into court to get her fair share. David always took care of his kids, paying not just his child support, but also much more. When David and I decided to build our home, we set up what would happen if one of us passed before the other. Basically, the survivor would get the house, but when the survivor passed or sold the home, 50% of the proceeds would go to their designated heirs. For David, it was his kids. For me, it was my sister. We were both contributing equally to the new home. Then, in 2018, David decided to change jobs, and he was taking 2 weeks off between the end of his old job and the start of his new one. David had almost all of his insurance, including life insurance, through his employer. We lost him in an accident a week before he was to start his new job. David had a will that left his savings. We kept our finances separate, and his 401k to his kids, but there wasn't a large amount. There was no life insurance. We did have mortgage insurance, so when David passed, the house was paid off. Kelly hated me and did everything she could to make her kids do so as well. So it was no surprise we didn't have any contact after David passed. I was surprised when Kelly reached out to me a couple of weeks ago. She said that she and the kids are struggling financially since she ended up having to close down her business in 2020. She is working now, but at a low-paying call center job. She wants me to sell the house so that half of the proceeds would go to the kids and she can use that for their education and medical expenses. According to Kelly, Megan is having medical issues and needs treatment that her insurance does not cover and Kelly cannot afford. I said no, I was not selling my home. Honestly, I could care less what Kelly thinks. She has been a jerk to me since the day I met her. However, David's parents, whose opinion I do respect, also called to say that they believe it is what David would have wanted. I told them I would think about it. I know my husband loved his kids more than anything and would have done anything for them. Right now, living without rent or a mortgage, I am on track to retire very early. I have decided I am not giving that up. His parents told me that David would be ashamed of me for being a selfish jerk, which I admit hurt to hear. Am I the jerk? Karen demands to walk her daughter on our private property. My 22 female cousin, who's 22 female, and her family have a beautiful property. Her mom would babysit me during the summers, so I basically grew up there. There are 3 houses with all of her dad's close family living there, which surrounds a big pond. There's a small boat dock, a tennis court, and a pavilion. It's surrounded by forest except for the entrance. It's totally private property, which means that they have big signs at the front of the entrance that says, "No trespassing." There's also another street sign halfway down the road that says, "No trespassing." Her and her family get really annoyed when random people come walking down their property and just ignore the signs. To get to the property, you have to go down a sort of long road that goes past a few buildings. When you first turn into the road, there's a Wawa. Americans who live in our part of the country, let me know if that's what it is. It's a deli shop / convenience store that has amazing food and coffee, a small strip mall, and an apartment complex. I lived in that complex for about a year, which is when this took place. Sorry about the long description, I just hope that this will give you a good enough picture of the area. Now on to the story. When I moved into that apartment complex, I asked my cousin if I could walk my dog around her property. She of course gave me permission. One day after I was done walking my dog around the pond, I was leaving through the front gates, which again had the no trespassing signs. I saw this random woman walking with her daughter down towards the entrance who I had never seen there before. I politely asked her if she knew the family who lived there, and she said no. I then pointed at the big sign and I said, "Sorry, it says no trespassing." She then gave me an annoyed face and said, "Well, you were just on their property?" And I replied, "Yes, I was, and I know the family. I'm related to them and they gave me permission to go down there." She said, "Well, my daughter wants to go down there. Are you saying that she can't explore?" I replied, "If it means that you're trespassing, then yes, I am saying that you and your daughter can't go exploring down there." She finally gave out a big annoyed huff and turned to her daughter and said, in a very rude tone, "Sorry, honey, this lady won't let us go down there." And they finally turned around and started walking back. I felt like it would be awkward if I started to walk behind them back to my apartment, so I turned around and just walked my dog around the pond one more time, and then I left after that. The next day I was with my cousin and I told her about the entitled mom and she thanked me. She said how annoyed she gets when random people showed up. I can relate because I also have a property with no trespassing signs, yet people still walk down it. Honestly, it's probably the most ignored street sign in America. Update. My sister demands to take my camper for her son to live in. My sister and her husband fell on hard times because of the lockdown. They went from renting a nice house to having to rent a room from a friend. It was supposed to be temporary, but they've been in his house for an entire year. And he didn't have more than one room to spare to rent to them. I have a family of my own and my house is full, so I didn't want them living with me. But I have a vintage camper trailer in my backyard. One of those small ones that they called a canned ham type. It's had various repairs over the years, including redoing the floor and ceiling, as well as getting a new axle. And it's in pretty decent condition for being over 50 years old. I take this camper on yearly trips with friends and on camping trips with my family, and I'm very particular about its upkeep. My sister, though, has asked to borrow the camper numerous times to put it in her friend's backyard so her teenage son could have some privacy and use it as a personal bedroom. But I know my nephew. He's destructive with everything and would turn my camper into a total mess. And I'm certain they wouldn't want to give it back whenever I need it because he'd already be living in it. I know they can't simply go out and get a camper of their own because ones in usable condition are not cheap. And right now, they're trying to save every extra dime to get back on their own feet. Recently, my sister has gotten our parents involved, and they think I should just lend them the camper, but I've still refused. They won't let up and seem to think that if they keep hounding me as a collective that I'll give in, but I haven't. My wife is on my side and has refused to let my sister and brother-in-law in when I wasn't home. They have a vehicle that can tow the camper, so I don't trust them not to take it if they can get into the backyard. My house also has cameras, and my sister and brother-in-law are aware of them now. They say I'm the jerk because I only use the camper a few times a year and they need it now. But I worry that they wouldn't want to give it back, much less return it in the same condition. I firmly believe I'm in the right, but with my parents and sister constantly breathing down my neck, I thought I'd come here for an unbiased opinion. Am I the jerk for not lending the camper to them? Info: I did suggest they get my nephew a tent, but they shot the idea down and called a tent temporary. If anything, that just felt like another red flag to me. More info: our parents do not live close anymore. They moved several states away to retire a few years ago. Update: I showed my sister and brother-in-law this post after getting the verdict. My parents have seen it as well. They are all very unhappy with me, but my parents have backed off and say they won't bother me with it again. I also spoke with my sister alone and went through the rough estimates of what possible repairs to the camper would be should my nephew damage it. My sister was not happy to see those numbers. Then I called her out on how they'd likely not want to return the camper when I need it. But they also tried to come to my house when I wasn't home to take it without permission, and I told her I'd have no problem calling the police if they ever try to do that. My sister is still trying to say that her son needs the camper, but when I went through the comments on this post with her, she became incredibly embarrassed and then she got angry. She left saying she won't bother me for the camper anymore, but still stated that she thinks I'm a jerk. I didn't reply because I knew she was waiting to gaslight me, just waved her goodbye and she left. My brother-in-law called me shortly after to yell at me, but he had no leg to stand on other than that they wanted. I told him I'd contribute $100 for a tent, but they're on their own for the rest. They actually agreed to the $100, so I guess my nephew is getting a tent to live in. Update: things seemed to get better after I made my sister and brother-in-law give up on borrowing my camper. If they'd gotten their hands on it, I likely wouldn't have gotten it back anytime soon, short of getting police or a lawyer involved. Some people wondered if my sister and brother-in-law were going to actually use the $100 I gave them to get my nephew a tent to have his own place in the backyard. I admit I had my doubts, but they followed through on getting him one. Our parents sent them some money as well, and they got my nephew a good-sized tent that he can have a cot to sleep on in, and a small amount of simple furniture. I personally donated the cot as I had an old Coleman one sitting in my garage unused for years. I gave him a folding camping chair too. The boy got electricity in the tent via an extension cord from the main house. However, he frequently complained about the heat during the day and only had a couple of those little pseudo air conditioners that you can just put water in to keep his tent cool. Though honestly, I doubt this situation would have been any different if he had my camper because it can get pretty hot inside of it too. Now on to what happened a bit over a month later. My sister and brother-in-law were evicted from their friend's house. Apparently, while there was trouble with my nephew needing his own space and being messy and defiant, they were also having more trouble with the friend who was also their landlord. They tried to smooth things over by putting their son in the tent so he wouldn't be in the house much to avoid trouble. I suppose that might have worked had my sister and brother-in-law not been caught with things they shouldn't have had, illegal things, bad ones. Their friend/landlord went into their room while they were away and he found their stash. That's why they were evicted. Suddenly, it made sense why in 2 years they couldn't have afforded a small apartment to move into despite both of them working full-time. Their extra cash just went right to their habits instead of saving it like they claimed to have been doing. Looking back, they did look a bit more unhealthy at the time, but I assumed it was due to stress. And not long after being outed, their habits put them behind bars. People who are using this kind of stuff can go very wild in an instant, and that's exactly what happened. When their friend/landlord gave them an eviction notice for having found this stuff in the house, my sister and brother-in-law both got physical with him, and he called the police. That scared them, and they locked themselves in their rented room. Meanwhile, my nephew was blissfully unaware of what was happening as he was just gaming alone in his tent. The friend/landlord pressed charges, and the police soon arrested my sister and brother-in-law because there was indoor security cameras that caught the whole altercation. I was very surprised about what had happened when I heard about it. I got a call from the police station, and I was asked to take in my nephew since he could no longer stay where he was. Since our parents are states away and living in a retirement community, they couldn't take him in, so it was up to me, and I did so. I wasn't particularly fond of my nephew, but I realized his upbringing really did not help our relationship. nor did the fact that my sister and I don't really get along. We brought his tent over to my place and set it up in my backyard. He's still living in it, even though we've cleared out the attic for him. But he says he likes the tent better because it feels like his own little house where he can just be himself. We've even added a mini fridge that I bought used in there for him, so he can have cold drinks when he wants them. Currently, we're still working on becoming my nephew's permanent legal guardians. My sister and brother-in-law are both facing heavy charges. They assaulted a man, resisted arrest, and were in possession of things they shouldn't have had. From jail, though, they've actually been very cooperative, albeit while dealing with withdrawals and no longer being able to self-medicate. I've been to see my sister, and she said she and her husband were so out of it the day that it happened, they don't even remember attacking their friend. I don't know if they're faking memory loss to try and get a lesser punishment, or if they really were that messed up. But I suppose it doesn't matter. It changes nothing since there was CCTV showing the attack. They're looking into possibly getting a plea deal when they go to court in November. But even with that, they may be in prison until their son is over 18 at least. I didn't have the heart to risk the foster system on my nephew. My wife has had my back on this too, and we've been working as a team. My sister and brother-in-law have signed over the title to their SUV to me, and the plan is to make it my nephew's vehicle when he gets older, since he'll be 18 in 3 years. Or we can sell it to get him something that uses a lot less fuel. I already had to pay to get the SUV back from the police impound. That's money I know I'm never going to get back. When my sister and brother-in-law get out of prison in a few years, they're not exactly going to have much to their name. So taking care of their son and making sure he grows up in a better environment feels like the least I can do. For those wondering about the stuff they were using, it wasn't entirely out of left field. My sister was especially troubled in her teenage years and struggled with addiction in her early 20s with the same thing. She nearly got kicked out of college for it. Our parents always dug her out of the mire and helped her back on her feet. They even paid for her rehab. We all thought she'd been clean for a long time, but she admitted to me when I visited her in jail that her husband also had the same addiction issues. That's actually how they met. Not in rehab, but in a focus group after the rehab. They didn't admit to any of this until recently, not sure why. But with the stress they faced in the past 2 years, falling back into old habits became easy for them. I've tried checking up on their former landlord to ask if he was okay. However, he wants nothing to do with my family. He had some pretty offensive things to say when I went over to gather my sister and brother-in-law's stuff, once police gave me the okay. And the man actually threatened me while I was there carrying out the boxes. He said he thinks my family are all alike, a bunch of filthy jerks. So I don't feel as sorry for him as I did. He's a pretty big jerk himself. My nephew also confirmed this. My kids weren't exactly receptive of their cousin being around. There's a bit of an age gap between them, and they just don't relate to one another. And while my nephew is messy, we make him clean his tent once a week, and we make him shower at least 2 to 3 times a week. We live in a warmer climate, but now that the seasons are changing, it's cooling down a little bit to where he says the tent isn't so bad. He's got a tablet, a laptop, a DVD player, and a Nintendo Switch to occupy his time. But we keep these things in the house whenever my nephew isn't home. It's way easier to steal out of a tent than a house after all. Considering how angry my nephew was before, he rarely shows his temper now. Yes, he makes it hard to get him to do his chores, but as a whole, he's shown more improvement in a couple months than I saw in 3 years. He's extremely grateful, but he's also very solitary. We give him space most of the time, and I make sure my kids don't bother him either. He's going through a lot right now. My nephew plays a lot of Zelda and Fortnite. At least those are 2 of the games he plays that I know of. My kids love those games too. We've also given my nephew the old 10-speed road bike I used to use years ago. He rides it to and from school as we live about a mile away from the local high school. Thus far, most of the drama from him has been school-related. He had to change to a different high school and make new friends, which he wasn't particularly happy about. He really doesn't like doing his homework, and he's been fighting with his teachers, but that's a problem many parents face on the regular. He says he's made a few friends though, and I'm thankful for that. We're taking things one step at a time, and so far it's slowly getting better. My nephew has also talked of one day getting a part-time job. For the record, he brought this up, not me or my wife. He says he needs to be ready to be independent when he's 18, but we wouldn't kick him out just for getting older. He's one of our kids now too, after all. But if he's willing to work hard and move on to working full-time or going to college, we'll encourage him. I just don't want him ending up like either of his parents. He seems to be far better off mentally without their influence now anyway. It makes me regret not wanting to take him in sooner, but I didn't know how bad things really were. To think this all started because my sister and brother-in-law wanted my camper for their son, and those of you who said they potentially wanted it to skip town if they had gotten a hold of it, you may very well have been right. They were on thin ice with their landlord and falling ever deeper into addiction. Thus far, though, my nephew has been completely indifferent to the camper, even though his tent is practically right next to it. He says as long as he has his own space, he's fine. Reminds me of when I was his age. I enjoyed hanging out and spending nights in the old shed my parents made into a playhouse for me and my sister when we were kids. But we are still required to have a room at the ready for my nephew whenever a social worker checks up on us. He has the bulk of his stuff in the attic room, but chooses to stay in the tent, which the social worker doesn't seem to mind since it was my nephew's preferred place to hang out, so long as an actual room was available to him. We also have a 7-foot-tall privacy fence all around the backyard and cameras too. That helps my nephew feel safe back there at least. So for now, I think we have things covered. I probably won't update again, as it's pretty much a guarantee my sister and brother-in-law are going to be locked up for a few years. Our parents are especially mad at them about it and have thanked me to no end for taking my nephew in. They want to fly over to visit this Christmas so we can all spend time as a big family for the first time since lockdown. And before I go, I know some are probably going to ask where brother-in-law's family is for all of this. Couldn't they help? Why didn't my sister and brother-in-law ask them for help? Well, the answer is they couldn't. I don't know a lot, but brother-in-law spent the latter half of his own childhood in the foster system. His family aren't in his life. I don't know who they are or where they are. He hated them so much that he actually took my family name when he married my sister, so they aren't involved whatsoever with my nephew.
Most of the stories we read infuriate me, but this one, my heart feels something strange right now. I don't know what it is.
Aw, is Karen getting emotional?
Silence, you fool.
I want a doctor to place my IV. This story takes place a few years back when I was doing a clinical rotation in phlebotomy for my degree in medical laboratory science. I was placed in the ED, emergency department, of a local hospital, practicing poking patients and drawing their blood. All of the staff knew that my snow white scrubs meant I was a student, but some patients took them to mean I was a physician. One night, I happened to walk by an exam room where an altercation was taking place between a patient, I will call Mr. Smith, and a very patient RN, registered nurse. Altercations were a fairly common occurrence in the ED, but I was still pretty green, so it was hard to not stop and listen in. Nurse: I've been doing this for 30 years, Mr. Smith. I can assure you. Patient:
I don't care how long you've been doing this. I want a doctor to place my IV.
Nurse: Mr. Smith, if you hold still, I promise I'll have it in a flash. You'll hardly feel a thing.
Are you deaf or just stupid? I want...
At this point, the man catches sight of me loitering in the hallway.
I want her to place my IV.
Me, flabbergasted. But I can't thread IVs. I only know how to draw blood. Nurse: Sir, she's just a student. This affront seemed to put the patient into overdrive, and he began slamming his fist on the bed rail, screaming for a doctor. The nurse quietly took me aside and asked me to go fetch one of the physicians on duty. I ran to get the kindest one, as I was afraid of getting snapped at by the other doctors working that night. I'll call him Dr. Anderson. Dr. Anderson patiently listened to my explanation, wordlessly grabbed at an IV kit out of the cupboard, and followed me to the patient's room. We could hear the patient still throwing his tantrum as we walked down the hall. As soon as Dr. Anderson stepped into the room in his white coat, the patient switched it off like a light and breathed a heavy sigh of relief.
Finally,
with a smug smile at his nurse. Dr. Anderson, with a big friendly smile. Hello, Mr. Smith. I hear you want a doctor to place your IV. Well, I haven't done this since medical school, so that's, 25 years ago now? I might be a little rusty, but I'm happy to give it a shot. Nurse, will you please position the patient's head? I'm going for the jugular. Suddenly, the patient decided he didn't want a doctor to place his IV after all, and the nurse, with 30 years of experience placing IVs, would do just fine.
I worked in a hospital for 3 years. You wouldn't believe how many entitled people you'll find there.
Am I the jerk for refusing to let my stepbrother propose with my mom's heirloom? My mother passed 3 years ago. I, 19 female, was her only biological kid, but she took care of my stepdad's kids, 25 male, 26 male, and 30 female. Since their mom passed, giving birth to 25 male, I'll call him John, so my mom was their only maternal figure. They married when I was 2, and she took care of them ever since. I'm not personally close with either of them or her husband, and when she passed, I moved to my dad's home full-time and never spoke to them again. Now, my mom left some money to each of them, but nothing like jewelry, family heirlooms, or things like that. John wants to get married to his long-term girlfriend, and a few weeks ago sent me a message on Facebook saying he wanted to talk, and I agreed. I congratulated him and everything, but he asked for my mom's engagement ring since she always promised it to him. My mom and John were really close, closer than me and her maybe. I knew she loved him the most, and it hurts. Yeah, but whatever. He showed me some old messages between him and my mom saying things like, "If you want the ring, just ask, my love," or "I have the ring kept in a box for you." But she never actually changed her will for the ring to be left to him, and she had plenty of time to do so because she did leave them money. This ring goes back to a few generations, maybe 200 to 250 years old. It was my mom's, my grandma, my great-grandma, etc. My mom wore it all the time, and it's the only piece of jewelry she actually liked. I said I was going to think about it before leaving. I consulted my mom's lawyer, and he said that they have no claim over the ring because it's stated for the rest to go to me while they received money, and that if they try to sue, it'll most likely be a loss on their part, so I'm legally in the clear. I texted my stepbrother again and said that I'd given it thought and ultimately decided to not give the ring, but that he was welcome to pick another piece of my mom's jewelry box. Everything exploded. John and his brothers are calling me a jerk because she promised him, and I don't know what to do. He's calling me a thief and a jealous sister. ETA. Please, people, stop calling me jealous. I never badmouthed or spoke ill of my stepbrother or the rest of my stepfamily to be called like that. I never implied he was less than me or that I hated him or didn't like them. My mom passed when I was still a minor, and I went to live with my dad full-time. We just lost the relationship, but I've always wished them good things. I wrote a line about how my mom was closer to him and it hurt me, but nothing more. I was just accepting facts to give you context, not to be called jealous. Not the jerk. She ultimately decided to not give it to him apparently. Also, texts could be fake. OP. They weren't fake. It was the real chat between my mom and him. He had to go a few years back because he still texts her his milestones. Not the jerk. Block him. You had no contact with him after your mom passed, so it shouldn't be that hard to block him. Your mom took the time to write out a will where she made it very clear what she wanted to leave each of you. If she really wanted him to have it, she would have either included it in the will or changed the will at some point. She did neither of those things. The fact that this ring has been in her family for over 200 years and was passed down from mother to daughter suggests she was intentional in not leaving it to him in the will. She was intentionally leaving all of her personal items to you as her biological daughter. She left them money, but she chose for you to receive her personal belongings because there was a sentimental value that she wanted you as her daughter to have. You may not have felt close growing up, but your mom knew what she was doing and wanted to continue the family tradition, having the ring passed down from mother to daughter. You're the jerk. This isn't legal advice. This is Am I the Jerk? Unless you have reason to believe that your mom was referring to a different ring, it's pretty clear that she wanted him to have it. She may not be biologically related, but she raised those kids as her own, and they deserve memories too. You're the jerk. He showed you evidence that showed your mom's wishes, and you chose to ignore them and only care about illegality. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her stepbrother? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for no longer supporting my family and retiring? I, 38 female, recently quit my job at a big tech company making over $200,000 a year, and my husband also makes similar working in tech. I live very frugally and saved 70 to 75% of my income with my husband. We now have a nest egg big enough to retire and enjoy our passions. He loves carpentry and is making custom furniture, and I'm dog walking and making custom cakes. Now we make enough to support ourselves since our house is paid off. With our nest egg, I think even with inflation, we should make it for the rest of our lives. So we decided to work for ourselves, but of course it means we don't make as much. My husband still works as a contractor, but the contract expires in 6 months, and I've already retired. I was burned out already for years, but forced myself through it because I was afraid of retiring during lockdown uncertainty. But it looks like a crapshoot no matter what, so I just retired to enjoy my life. The problem is, I paid for my parents' housing for nearly a decade. My brother has ADHD and lives with them and has been fired from pretty much every job he's had. I believe it's because my parents coddle him and not due to his ADHD. He got meningitis as a baby, and while he doesn't have any long-lasting issues from that, my parents were always really soft on him because of it and let him get away with everything. Now he's in his 30s and can't hold down a job, so my parents are still raising him, and my mom never worked because my dad was always the breadwinner. But my dad was laid off a decade ago and couldn't find other work in his field, so he's been doing odd jobs and part-time work. When they couldn't make rent, they asked me to help them and guilted me into it because I made more. So I pay roughly $700 a month for them to stay in their place and have done so for the last decade. In the beginning, I tried to get my mom and brother to work, but they kept saying how tired they were and kept putting off sending out resumes to a point I just gave up. About 4 months ago, I told them of my plan to retire early and start my own business, and of course, I was called selfish and ungrateful for cutting them off because I make more and I'm choosing to quit. This month, the landlord came to ask for money, and they ran to me for money again, even though I gave them 4 months' notice and made it clear that September's rent was the last month I'm paying and demanding I pay another month because they weren't ready. I told them they had 4 months to figure things out, but I was sick of paying for their rent when my parents are still in their early 60s and they can work. Now I'm getting repeated calls, texts, emails, calling me cruel and greedy for cutting them off. Not the jerk. I have ADHD and have a career in engineering. Your parents just raised a jerk. If they keep asking you for money, go low contact with them. Not your pig, not your farm. Good luck in your retirement. I'm very jealous. Not the jerk. 4 months is more than most people would get. You complain about your parents enabling your brother, but that $700 enables all of them. ADHD is tough, but millions manage to work with it. It's time for brother to figure it out. Even a part-time job would make up that $700 in a few weeks. Not the jerk. You never should have been paying their bills to begin with. You're lucky enough that you can retire so young and enjoy yourself, and that's amazing, but you're not obligated to care for 3 full-grown adults. You're not a babysitter, and none of them are senile. Am I the jerk for going on a 30th birthday trip instead of to my stepsister's wedding? Some background. My parents got divorced when I was 12 years old. My mom moved on very quickly and got married to her husband, Frank, within 1 year. Frank has a daughter, Alicia, who is 2 years younger than me. They moved in together shortly after, so I lived half with them and half with my dad from about ages 13 to 18. Towards the end of high school, despite the custody technically being 50-50, I stayed with my dad the majority of the time. I also have 2 older real siblings who were 15 and 18, so I didn't spend as much time with Alicia. Alicia and I were always cool, but never really close. Nothing against her, I just wasn't looking for a new sibling, and as you can imagine, I had my hesitations about Frank. Anyways, Alicia got engaged recently and is planning a wedding for this June, on what just so happens to be my 30th birthday. Having a mid-June birthday, this doesn't offend or shock me. It's always wedding season, so I've spent quite a few birthday weekends at weddings. It's just what it is. When my mom called me to tell me she knows the timing isn't ideal, but made a joke, "At least you'll have a free party on your birthday," I told her that actually I have a Euro trip planned with my girlfriend for that week. We've been planning it for quite some time, before Alicia got engaged. My mom and Frank both told me I need to reschedule it because a family event comes before a vacation. I responded by saying I wish her the very best, but she's not exactly my family, and I'm going to spend my 30th birthday how I want to. I will contribute some cash to her honey fund, but that's about it. They're both really mad at me, and Alicia reached out to me apologizing about the date, but it was the only time they could get the venue they wanted. I told her no sweat, and I hope she has a blast. She then begged me to come and said I mean a lot to her, as I'm the only step-sibling she had time to bond with, which caught me off guard because I never considered us close. I told her sorry, but my mind is made up. She seemed really sad and eventually hung up. Since then, my mom has been begging me to change my mind, and Frank said I'm being a huge jerk since he helped raise me. I should be there for my sister's wedding. I laughed and said I wouldn't call him a father figure and she's not my sister. That set him off even more. Am I the jerk here? Not the jerk. If you were that close, she would have known you were planning a big birthday trip. OP. Yeah, I would never consider us close, so she didn't know I had plans. But I'm not offended at her choosing that date. Like I said, having a mid-June wedding, I expect lots of more birthdays to be spent at other people's weddings. But for my 30th, I want to do my own thing since it's a milestone. I don't understand how people expect others to have sibling feelings towards their parents' significant other's kids. In some cases, they may feel family affection towards the step-parent and their kids, and in many other cases, the relationship is more of roommates. A parent's marriage to a person with kids doesn't obligate the kids to have affection for each other. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for not canceling his birthday trip and going to his sister's wedding, or not? Please let us know.
Have fun on your birthday trip, and don't worry about what these bozos think.
Am I the jerk for not sharing the role of mom and Mother's Day with my kid's stepmom? I have two kids, ages 11 and 9. X and I were young parents and broke up the day our son was born. He married his wife, Kate, when our kids were 4 and 2. It's been a wild ride. When X first married Kate, he filed to change our custody plan to 50-50, which wasn't possible before because he worked as a truck driver and was away a lot. He wanted the kids at his house with Kate even if he wasn't going to be there. The judge rejected it, and the custody remained in place for another 2 years until he left that job so he could have more time with the kids. Then custody went to 50-50. X and Kate have always referred to her as Mom Kate. The kids call her Kate. When custody went to 50-50, X asked me to split Mother's Day with them so the kids could celebrate with both moms equally. I said no. I got Mother's Day just like he got Father's Day. It caused some tension, but I had the court order to back me up. There has been tension and drama over how the kids refer to Kate, their relationship with her versus their relationship with me, and how I have never accepted shared mom role with Kate. The truth is, I've always felt like she is secondary to me and my ex, still an active part of their lives, still has her opinions and requests, but that X and I are the ones who should be dealing with the nitty-gritty stuff. I found out 6 weeks ago that X has asked the kids twice to ask me to let them go to his house for half of Mother's Day. It came up when my son told me Dad asked them to tell me we needed to talk about Kate being their mom. He asked me what I wanted them to tell their dad. I said nothing. I would talk to Dad. They didn't need to. He then told me he was surprised they said anything since they obviously never asked to go to their Mother's Day, and how he always waited for them to say they hadn't done it either time. I told him not to drag our kids into it. He told me I was being unfair, that Kate has been around long enough to be seen as their mom too, especially as the mother to their other siblings, and how I need to start treating her as such. It got worse when 2 weeks ago, my daughter was sick and she had the school call me instead of Kate. It was X's parenting time, and Kate should have been the first call technically, but my daughter asked the school nurse to call me. When I called X after taking my daughter home, things blew up because he was upset my daughter asked that I be called, and also upset when our daughter didn't want to go with Kate when she arrived to pick her up. They're saying I've turned the kids against Kate by not encouraging them to love and treat her with the same as me, and because I have refused to give up the role of sole mom and share the role with the other woman who is also their mother. It has become a very tense dispute because I don't see what I have done as wrong, but I guess what they're saying bothers me enough to wonder. Am I the jerk?
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.